Hey everyone, Livelock here, and this is going to be a companion guide to my Enhancement Shaman Mega Guide. That one goes over all of the talents and rotations and like the core concepts of the build in Mythic Plus. This one focuses more on the specific details of Mythic Plus bosses in each of the dungeons. There's a lot of little things that you can do to get a lot more damage on bosses because a lot of bosses have these periodic ad phases that you can focus on, and there's also a lot of things that you should be doing that most people don't think about in lower keys on bosses like the first boss in Theater of Pain. Like you have both kick and purge responsibilities that if you don't do will make the boss take way longer than otherwise. So this will hopefully inform you to all those mechanics and all those min max DPS edge cases and help you accelerate your damage on those tyrannical weeks especially. We're finally in DOS, the other side. And the first boss depends on your route. For me, in this video, it was Hakkar. Hakkar is a pretty good boss fight for Enhance. There's plenty of regular ads that come out. It's a tough boss fight, though. You're not responsible for anything uniquely as a Enhancement Shaman. There's no tremor or anything like that. You can do stuns on the ads. You can do slows on the ads to help people kite away from them, little things like that. The big thing here is the mechanics are kind of tough. So it's hard for melee. You can see me spreading my puddle around. People will get this disease, and they can't be too close to each other. Otherwise, the disease will keep on like spreading around. There's that, and this blood shield over here. Depending on how many of Hakkar's ads are currently up, this shield will gain intensity. So towards the end of the fight, it'll be way worse than it is at the start of the fight. So because of that, a lot of teams opt into using Bloodlust on the second half of the fight rather than on the start, just to make sure that those shields last less time. Because as long as the shields are up, like everyone's taking damage and these puddles are going out everywhere, and the boss isn't taking any damage. It's just like shield damage. The ads, as they die, drop these giant puddles, so your tank has to move him out of the puddles as soon as possible. Otherwise, what your goal is over here for min-maxing is using your Primordial Wave on ads. This can be kind of tricky, and I don't think I do a great job of it here. But like, there's an ad up right now. Hopefully, I'll get a Lava Lash, and it'll auto-spread to that ad. Okay, yeah, so now that ad has Flame Shock, but now it's dead, so... as long as your Primordial Waves line up with these ad phases, it's not totally deterministic, you know, how long they'll take. I typically don't focus on ads very much, although there is a case to be made for doing that instead of frost damage sometimes, because it'll basically decrease the damage or the amount of shield that the boss has. Like right now, all of this ad will be going into the shield, and now we don't do any boss damage, we do shield damage. But if you can aim to get your Primordial Waves onto ads, the reason I say it's an okay boss fight is because I find it very difficult to get my Flame Shock onto them in time and have my Primordial Wave actually line up with their existence in the first place. So I give it like an okay rating. Like there are ads, but I find it difficult to leverage the ads on this fight. Otherwise, just make sure you don't stand in too many puddles and use a lot of damage abilities. I would hold sometimes. I would hold your damage abilities for the start of these phases. Like maybe save Ghost Wolf for your second Ghost Wolf for the start of a phase like this. And towards the end, you might even have to use not Ghost Wolf, your wolves, your Spirit Wolves. You might even have to use them to get a bit of Maelstrom to heal yourself, because this gets really spicy the longer it goes. So be prepared to use defensives and your Earth Ellie if you feel you have to. Otherwise, yeah, just don't die. Okay boss fight, I would say. The next boss in DOS is going to be the Manastorms. Not a great fight for Enhance either. The big thing here is the mechanics. So you'll start off by doing what you always do, getting the Ur buff and your big case buff. You usually use Lust on the second phase here, so don't Lust off the bat. There are two mechanics that you really care about here. The first one is this one, Summon Power Crystal. The Power Crystal has to be soaked, so you have to stand in between, you or somebody has to make sure this beam doesn't get to the boss. The good thing about doing this is the beam will give you a damage buff for as long as it's on you. So it stacks by 2% per stack. So you end up with like right now I have 4, 5 times 2. I have a 10% damage buff right now. So If you can get that, that's great. If you can't get it, it's probably honestly better off going to somebody else besides you because you don't have like a large cooldown to really use there. But but someone has to soak it, so it could be you, it could be somebody else. It does damage you though, so you can't soak it forever. So the higher the stacks go, like the higher the damage is to you. So just keep that in mind. Second phase, oh sorry, I hadn't even talked about the Z move. Yeah. So the other thing that he'll do is he'll periodically target two people with arrows, and a Z will form on the floor using them as like the corners of the Z. So yeah, you see that. The one of the lines has to be going through the boss because it'll stun him and stop him from doing this really bad move. So that part's simple. The reason that it's not a great fight for Enhance is there's no ads. Like, I guess you see the pattern forming, right? Like, if there's anything you can do to optimize your damage, then it's probably a pretty good fight. If there isn't, then your performance will be down to RNG. Like, do you get lots of hot hand procs, like at the right times when you have your dogs, like that kind of stuff. Maybe you can line it up so that you can actually take advantage of one of these crystals. Like if you get it right at the start, then that could be something that you can use to do a little bit better. But I don't know. Like I wouldn't take it from like a warlock or like a mage or something because they have very large cooldowns that they can amplify with that crystal. Whereas we may or may not. Like it's a gamble for us. So otherwise, the second phase, healer usually gets these bombs. Whenever somebody gets targeted with that floor effect, it stuns everybody in it, including the boss, so just don't stand in that. I would say I wouldn't expect much from this boss fight. It's a boss fight with two single target phases and mechanics that may make you lose uptime. So all of that is a recipe for an average boss fight for Enhancement Shaman. The third boss here is going to be Dealer Zyexta. This will also be a bad fight for you. This one's worse. This might be the worst one in the dungeon. I don't know. Hard to tell. It's not a great fight for you, though. So there's one way that you can make this a really good fight for you, and that's if you can get the tank to pull in these 3 stealth ads up top. Like, if you can do that, then you'll actually be able to use those ads for funnel. Otherwise, it's going to be just a very long single-target boss fight where you lose uptime because you have the mechanics. So the mechanics on this one are also a little challenging for pugs to do. What she does is she hits you with a lightning move called, actually I forgot what it's even called, but it applies these stacks over here, like a vulnerability to magic damage. So this will jump around to people. You have to make sure that you don't get your stacks too high because at some level it'll just be doing too much damage to you for you to actually live. So like if you get like 10 stacks and you keep on giving it to the same person over and over again, then I would just back out, hand it off to like a ranged class, and then like, you know, let your stacks drop for a while. If you don't get it twice, then your stacks will drop, and you may have to make sure that happens. She also does this thing where she targets somebody with a bomb. That person has to go up and make sure that they go up around like 2 seconds left on the bomb's explosion timer so that it explodes up there and it doesn't hurt you down here. And then she'll do a bomb down here, and everybody else has to do the same thing. Like everybody will go up and avoid getting hit down here. I always take Feral Lunge for this boss. Well, I mean, I always take Feral Lunge, but Feral Lunge is definitely a good ability here because it avoids you taking fall damage at all. And you do like you take a lot of fall damage. There's a potentially very dangerous overlap. Like you can see what just happened to me there. Like I'll rewind that actually. So be very careful about this. If you get chosen, or I guess if you have to go up, in this case everybody goes up, but if you go up and you get hit with this lightning at the same time while you have vulnerability stacks and the bomb, and then you take fall damage on the way down, like you'll probably get one shot. Like you probably won't live that on any non-trivial key for you. So Feral Lunge avoids like 20 to 30% of your HP in fall damage, so that's definitely worth it. And you should have it up every single time, unless you're very unlucky about getting chosen too much with bombs. And you have to make sure that you don't get too high stacks of this stacking vulnerability here. So like right now, like this is this is approaching too high. I can't get a third one, so I have to give it to somebody else. But it's hard to do because we're all in melee range. Like, I'm not doing the right thing here. I'm running out. I'm hoping to give it to somebody else. Oh, I don't have it anymore, right? But I can't get it again. So, okay, I got lucky. It dropped off. Now I can get it again. Like, that's how this fight works. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of complicated. It's hard to coordinate because, like, this is just like position dictates how well you do with the mechanics. But in terms of damage, the only way you're going to do really well on this fight is if you get the tank to pull in some ads. That's really the only option that you have here. Otherwise, it'll just be like a long single target fight with low uptime. The last fight is Mueh'zala. You'll notice on the way over, people will say in chat like FL, BR. That means like front left, back right. That's because he has this phase where 4 totems will spawn around the room. So the phase 1 is just dealing damage to him as a normal boss fight. That's fine. And then phase 2 is going through the portals to these totems. Usually at lower keys, everybody goes through one, and the tank and the healer double up and they go through their own. As that gets higher, this is a 23 DOS, and this is high enough that we decide that I can't consistently solo the totem, so we just double up, which means half the team goes in front left, half the team goes in front right. So that's what we do at like around the 22 level for us. But here, this is going to be also not a great boss fight, but it's also not a great boss fight for other people. So this is one of those times, like the last boss in Spires of Ascension, where you'll probably end up doing pretty well relative to other people, but you won't end up doing very well relative to your best boss fights, like any boss fight with the ads, basically. So going into this fight, there are mechanics to respect on the first phase, mostly in the form of these little sparks dropping out. There's good and bad ways to handle the sparks, but so far I've actually never had a problem. Like, I've never been in a key where sparks were handled so poorly that we had to instead like coordinate on them. Like, I can usually get around them. The hitbox on Mueh'zala is so large that you have plenty of room to stand. You can even stand up here on this green ledge if you have to, just to keep uptime up. So I would prio. You can send your cooldowns on this first part. Like, they'll be up in time for the totem, which is the next phase. The totem will have to die. Otherwise, you'll have to go back and kill it all over again, and it would have been for nothing. But you will have enough time with the buff to get 2 wolves in. Like, 1 wolf right off the bat, and 1 wolf off the totems. Make sure you dodge what Mueh'zala is doing right now. He does a left, a right, and then a smash. So when it's smash, get behind this line. Technically, you can be like a little bit above the line and maybe even still reach him. It's up to you whether you want to try that or not, but not a huge deal. Now we're going into phase 2. I went with the tank and the healer. With this strategy, the totem ad right here, it'll die no problem. Like, it's very easy to get down when people double up. Just make sure the little spark things on the ground don't blow up and destroy you. That's the only thing to make sure about. Usually when you're soloing, what you'll do is you'll pick one side and you'll work your way across standing wise because they go in your general area. But when there's 3 people here, it's like, who knows what's going to happen. We can probably coordinate that a little bit better in comms though. But after this phase, you get a big haste buff for each of the totems you killed. So if it was 4, it would be a very large haste buff. For us, it's only 2. So I'm at 100% haste right now. So it's like a Bloodlust, basically. We used Bloodlust on Dealer because we knew that we were going to go double up on totems, and Bloodlust would be overkill, so we didn't want to use Bloodlust here. And that was because like I couldn't kill it myself anyway. I as a shaman, like you're doing pretty decent overall damage, but you don't have great burst damage. So the problem is you have to like, if you don't kill a totem, then your overall damage like doesn't matter anymore because you'll get a whole other phase anyway. So that's not great. It's an okay boss fight for us. I struggle with killing the totem as PLA, especially. You can kill it easier as other specs, but then like the overall damage of the dungeon will suffer a lot. Like, you'll be around like I'm around like 16k overall in a DOS right now on Tyran week. It's higher for fortified weeks, obviously, but Here, you don't have a lot of individual opportunity to min-max your damage. Just make sure you don't fail any of the mechanics, and make sure you set up your group comp to be able to do the totems in at most two totem rounds. Gambit, the other new dungeon, we have our first boss. The first boss is Hyldbrande. This is an okay boss for enhance. There are periodic adds, and those adds need to die. So it simplifies the choice of who do you primordial wave. You don't have to like spread it to both of them and then primordial wave Hyldbrande. Like you actually could plausibly just primordial wave one of them and do your prio on them, because they do have to die. So you do your normal opener. There are a couple of things that a shaman can do uniquely for this fight, or very well for this fight. And namely, those are stunning these adds when they start to do empowered defense, because it means that the boss will take less damage. And they have this cast that they do that you can interrupt. So either of those. Yeah, so I think I capped Totem there, and I got both of their defense abilities. I don't have my Primordial Wave up for this one, but we do actually do a pretty good job of getting them down. Usually the tank will do this console thing. Usually your job will be to download this weak aura. It's probably the first one if you look at Wago for like Gambit Hyldbrande or something like that. It'll be this weak aura. And then you have to move this icon to the top left console. You can probably do a couple if there's like somebody that doesn't know like the mechanics. Like you're pretty fast, so that's something that you can do. There's no damage amp. This should totally be a damage amp. I don't know why it's not, but it sounds like a damage amp. It looks like a damage amp, but he just doesn't take any extra damage. It's just like needless downtime that they added to this fight. So from this point forward, the way that you get higher damage on this fight is by holding your abilities for the ad phases and being ready. Like this guy got targeted with this beam mechanic, but if it were you, you'd have to run out ASAP. So be ready to run out at any moment, and don't stand in front of the boss because there's a frontal. So here, I apply Flame Shock to the new ad, and I Primordial Wave this ad because I decide I'm going to make this guy the guy that dies with my Primordial Wave. He's done, and now we go back to doing Hyldbrande. You don't lust this guy usually. Usually you lust the second boss and the third boss. Both of them are way more mechanically difficult, and they have like it feels like they take way longer than this guy because they have periods where you don't have uptime and in like more phases. So we got ads again. I don't have anything Primordial Wave for this one, so I'm just going to do normal prio on this guy. I do a stun because they were doing like their channel thing. We go back and forth in this cycle over and over again. It's a very long boss fight. I feel like it has like a bit too much health, but I mean the higher you go, like the more health they have. There's nothing special that happens after this point. Just make sure you always kick the casts that happen, and try to get your cap totem to interrupt at least one, if not two, of the empowered defenses. That's something that you can do very well. And our captain's a dragon. Time Capn Hooktail, the second boss in Gambit. This is a very lame boss as well. All of the Zo'phex bosses are like really, really lame. It's very hard for melee because eventually you're going to get zoned out by all these swirlies on the ground. It's obviously even worse for quaking, but the whole idea here is this is a very tank specific fight. Like the tank has to position this thing well so that melee can have uptime, and the ads are destroyed consistently by the frontal that the boss has. The thing you want to do is just make sure that you're in a reasonable position. If you're going to run anywhere, I would run next to the tank for as long as you can, because that's the only spot that's guaranteed to be safe in this fight is the tank spot. Just whatever you do, don't run behind, because if you run behind, the tail will grab you and like do damage to you and throw you. So you can't go behind him. Just be careful about the tank like suddenly moving. If you get hooked by this long chain, then make sure you get out of. Make sure you're not being pulled into the water, because the sharks will kill you. There's sharks in the water. It's kind of a nuts fight. Our tank actually did a pretty good job here of killing the ads, but this boss does have a lot of health, and it has a lot of downtime for melee classes, which is which is a recipe for you not doing that well. There are ads, but actually in this case, the better the tank does at managing the ads, the harder it is for you to leverage those ads. Oh, and he just took that too. So yeah, like he's actually getting the ads down really quickly, which is great really, but it means I can't actually ever have them grouped up to do primordial waves on the ads. But that would be your only chance at doing better than otherwise on this fight, would be to maybe throw out a flame shock as soon as you see one spawn. I'm hard focused on trying to have uptime, so I think I didn't do a great job of it myself here, but that would be the way that you do it. There's no kicks, there's no purges, nothing like that. You can use your Fleshcraft CC to get out of the pull. Well, you can make it stop the pull. You won't be pulled anymore while you're Fleshcrafting. I try and do it, but I got quaked, so I had to stop Fleshcrafting, so that was that. That's just like how it goes. But yeah, maintain high uptime. Don't get caught by the tail. Try to use the ads to get primordial wave buffs, but it might be difficult, and don't die. The final boss of Gambit is So'leah. So'leah is a very, very hard boss fight. It takes very long. This fight could take like 7 minutes or something like that on like higher keys. It's just like a very hard boss fight. It's like a little mini raid boss. I don't particularly like it myself. It's not a excellent fight for Enhanced either, for all the reasons that none of the Streets or Gambit fights are excellent Enhanced fights, because like low uptime, like sparse ads, and like really demanding mechanics that mean you don't do damage. In terms of this first phase, you have until 40%, and then So'leah will reset and go back to 100% and start the next phase. She periodically summons these ads. You should use. It's hard to tell. Like, if your team is doing really, really well on like AoE and cleave, then what I'll do is I will send a flame shock onto one and a primordial wave onto the other, and just make one die faster. Sometimes if they, I guess you don't even have to do the flame shock, because if they group up, we have a blood DK, so they got grouped up pretty well. Sometimes they don't group up so well. You have to kind of play that one by ear. But I would hold primordial wave until those ads come out, so you can prio one, or if they die really fast, then just do it on So'leah, wait till they get yoinked in, and then Lava Lash, and then funnel on So'leah. In my case, I think I probably should have done the latter. But this first phase isn't all that important, unfortunately. So like the hard part about this is the second phase, and the second phase has no ads. Like here, we're starting the second phase. You have to make sure that everybody's standing roughly around one of these stars. The stars will eventually get destroyed by an arrow. Make sure your arrow is going through your star. Everyone takes damage here as well. So if you need to, pop something like Astral Shift if you're low, because you might die. Otherwise, this is the second phase. There's no damage amp, really. You just have to not die. So this is the hardest part right here. Not dying means like surviving this mechanic mostly. What you want to do is you want to get a good camera angle. Tank should be pulling down here, ideally. And you want to make sure that you're in a good spot right away for the most recent one that went off. So at this point, you know you don't have to move at all anymore. I can tell here that I'm safe. I don't have to move at all. I can tell already that I'm going to be safe where I am, so I don't have to move. My eye is just going from star to star to star, and I'm basically spamming Lava Lash and Storm Strike buttons, because I'm not paying attention to my rotation at all, because it's very hard to like do two things at once on this fight. And now I can tell I do need to move, so I'm going to shift a little bit over to the left. Yeah. You can tell really quickly at a distance, as long as you know to focus on the stars. It's a really hard healer fight, because the healer doesn't have the luxury. The healer has to run out and do the collapsing star and all this other stuff and heal everybody. But the healer went actually too fast here, and I think everyone ends up dying on this one. But that's the whole fight, and it's just a matter of trying to have high uptime to make it go a little bit faster, because this boss has like a ton of HP, and like anything you do wrong will kill you. At least on higher keys. On weekly keys, I mean obviously none of it matters. But yeah, here somebody messed up something. I'm not sure what happened there, but something happened bad. Yeah, then you just do this all over again. Make sure that Okay, here's one thing to make sure. In this case, the healer made a mistake. The healer thought that he had to do his star, but that wasn't true. We got lucky, and my arrow would go through both stars. So the healer ends up getting hit by my arrow and his arrow, and he dies right away. Yeah, but he didn't have to do that because my arrow would have been enough to hit all of these stars. So he didn't pay attention to that, and that was his mistake, and now he's dead. I think we do end up wiping to this, but this is enough of the fight that you can get the core rotation and how to optimize. Like the damage is going to be very low here, so don't expect high damage. Don't expect to be able to do anything like very fancy to get out of this fight, but lust typically comes at the start of this phase if the timer works out for it. If you guys are going too fast or you skip too much trash, then you won't have that lust up for the start of this phase, and that's one thing to keep in mind. There's no more interrupts anymore, no purges, nothing like that. Just keep uptime high and don't die, especially to these stars. This will be the main thing that kills you is the stars. So try to do all those things while doing your rotation, and let me know how that goes. Moving over to Halls of Atonement, the first boss is the Halkias Shard, or I guess just Halkias. The little versions of him are shards. He is a pretty simple boss. Usually what people do is they grab 2 Loyal Stoneborns. You can get 2 Loyal Stoneborns by just spamming the Tame Stoneborn button, the boss button. If you keep on pressing it, long enough, you'll just get the second one. If you do them both at the same time, make sure they're both in range of you. This boss alternates between sending out these floor patches to the tank and to a random party member. So you don't want to stand in front of the boss because he will hit you with that frontal. And you want to make sure that if he targets you or someone near you, like this red patch over here, that you don't stand in that. The success of this, how smooth this goes, depends completely on the tank and how well the tank positions him relative to these patch phases. He does 3 tank patches before he triggers his second mechanic, which is spinning in circles with beams around him. That's the second mechanic. Usually what tanks will do is they'll bring him out after the second patch, and then once the third patch lands, they'll move the boss onto the third patch. That's what I usually do when I'm tanking, at least. But in terms of min-maxing on this guy and responsibilities, you have no responsibilities other than living and doing damage. There's nothing special here that you can really do. As you're getting more advanced in your play, you may choose to pull adds into this boss. There's a pack of Gargons. Like, there's 5 little Gargon guys that are right behind you on that side of the map. If you pull them in, then your boss damage would dramatically increase. So if you can do that, you definitely should do that. If you can get your tank to do that, because then you'll have 6 total targets. You'll be at max cleave, max funnel damage for this boss. So that would make a very, very large difference. If you could do that, you might be top damage on this fight, because ranged classes will have to move around over and over again, and they won't get as much uptime as they would prefer. You can tell over here our Warlock didn't have a good time here. Also, he was spec'd for Destro, so can't really look at his boss damage too finely here. Demo is usually where he'll do big boss dam on Tyrant Week, but you should do decent damage here. If you can get your tank to pull in more adds, then you'll go to the moon with damage. And we're already here at the second boss, Echelon. Echelon is a multi-phase boss. This first phase, he'll do the same thing that the Shard was doing, basically, except he'll throw blood puddles or something instead of Shard puddles. This boss has a large ad phase, so you want to make sure you get at least 1 Primordial Wave off, and then go into your Fire Nova as those ads are dying. You do actually have very important responsibilities in this fight. You're probably going to be the decursor, so it's going to be on you to look at who Echelon is targeting with his pounce. His second phase is everybody gets this curse where they turn to stone, so they can't move. Someone's going to get pounced on by him. The pounce is magic damage, so some classes can just AMS it off. Like a DK is actually not in any real danger for getting pounced one time, but you can tell here. So you can see the circle around the target, and if you use something like Bigwigs or Deadly Boss mods, it'll tell you who it's targeting. You have to really quickly just go over and dispel that person so that that person can get away. So unfortunately, our priest can't get away because they're slow, and he was booning, so he had to just stand there and take the take the damage while he had boon going. That was hilarious. But yeah, the main thing you want to do here is flame shock one of these guys right away. Wait till they group up. Lava lash Echelon. Don't lashing flames them. They die way too fast. Just use them for funnel on Echelon. And if you have good teams, they won't actually. I think I got him too. Yeah, I got the Warlock curse as well. If you have a good team, they won't immediately delete all the ads, and you'll use them a little bit. I would call this a good fight for Enhancement Shaman. There's some RNG that goes on with it, but if you can get a second curse dispel so that you can dispel yourself every single time, then you can get a lot more damage in as well. So the big thing about this fight is wait for ad phases. Make sure you get your Primordial Wave buff out on as many people as possible, and then use the ads for funnel, and then don't die. And also get your tank dispelled. I actually should not have dispelled the tank. The tank could have used AMS here. And actually, I think he did use AMS here, so that was a waste. I should have dispelled myself and gotten more funnel time. The tank was in no danger. So making snap choices like that is one thing you can do to optimize your damage here. The third boss of Halls of Atonement, High Adjudicator Aleez. This is the simplest and most boring fight in the entirety of Shadowlands. Almost none of her mechanics, literally none of her mechanics matter. You can stand in anything and probably live. On weekly keys, you can definitely live. On weekly keys, everybody could not kick anything and live like the entire time. So there's there's not a lot to worry about on this fight. The big thing you have to worry about is these ads are summoned, and whoever is fixated by the ad has to go to one of these lanterns, because once the ad runs into a lantern, it'll go away. And if it doesn't go into a lantern, like every second it's out, it just pulses out, AoE damage. But even on weekly keys, I've seen healers heal through like that adds damage because people don't know the mechanics. So it's not even that isn't that important. Well, it is obviously important to do your mechanics, and in higher keys it matters a lot. But I'm just trying to communicate that this is a dumb boss, and it's so strange that it's so dumb for so long. I don't know why it's like this, but you do have some min-max you can do. This ad, while it doesn't take any damage, it can turn into a flame shock target. So flame shock it right away, and then use it to get a double Primordial Wave buff. That's the most you can really do here. I usually focus the boss, and I use my kick for the first thing she does, the first volley she does after the run around phase, because I have a ranged one and I can always get it. In my case, we also have a blood DK. He's ranged as well, so not a huge deal. But in practice, like if you're gonna kick something, that's the thing to kick. Otherwise, the bolts only hit the target. The main target is the boss. Sorry, the tank of the bolts. So the bolts aren't high priority in lower keys. In higher keys, they will be. So you guys should work out a kick rotation. But in this fight, just it takes a while. You want to just get your Primordial Waves out. I would call this like an okay fight. Like having 2 targets for your Primordial Wave isn't excellent. And I'm always trying to I always end up holding some cooldowns for the next room up ahead. So I probably use 1 less cooldown than I would have if I really cared about boss damage here. But that's me. So simple boss fight. Not a lot of opportunity for min-maxing. Just make sure you kick the volleys, because those do the most damage. The final boss of HoA is Lord Chamberlain. Lord Chamberlain has a couple of phases. His first phase is nothing. He's just sending, you're doing damage to him, and he's making statues fly across the room at you. Just make sure you can keep as many of the statues as possible in your field of view, so you can tell if they point at you. Like right now, you can tell that was not a statue that you were in danger of, so you don't have to worry about running anywhere after he chooses that. Otherwise, he's doing frontals. You don't stand in the frontal. He does like a small AoE thing. Don't stand in the AoE thing. You can use Lust on start for this boss. You want to make sure as he's going into the second phase, he'll pull all of these statues into him. You don't want to get hit by those. And then he'll send out a beam from him to every statue. Usually the tank will soak 2 of the beams, and 2 other people have to soak the remaining beams. You can soak it with Fleshcraft pretty well. You can use Astral Shift. This usually isn't a very hard thing to survive, especially in weekly keys. In higher keys, you have to coordinate like a healer a healer cooldown. So you as an enhancement shaman are usually not in danger of this because you can probably generate enough Maelstrom to keep yourself alive for the entire phase, if you had to. You won't have to because you'll have a healer and you'll have Astral Shift for 1. You may have Astral Shift for 2 if you get lucky. Probably not. Probably just 1. And then you'll have your Earth Ellie for the other one. So you'll have a lot of health. There's no opportunity to min-max this fight in terms of damage. There's no adds you can use for Permeable Wave. It really comes down to just getting lucky, increasing your uptime as much as you can, not wasting your cooldowns on phases like this where you have to run away, and not getting hit by statues. The higher the key level, the higher the odds that the statue will one-shot you. So keep an eye out for that. This will be an okay boss fight for you. This fight is going to be Ingra Malak, the first boss in Mists. The basic idea with this fight is that you have 2 targets for the boss fight. Ingra Malak is the main target, but he has a ton of health, and he can have phases where he takes very little damage. So what you do is you damage the tree, Drummond, until about 20%, where the tree breaks free and starts a damage amp phase on Ingra. So you're basically going to be going back and forth between killing the tree and then bursting Ingra, killing the tree, bursting Ingra. The responsibilities you have here, every fight you should just make sure you get because you're really good at doing that. So I would send Primordial Wave immediately on spread it, and then get your haste buff while the ads are still up. Then the next most important thing on a normal fight would be to make sure that dies fast, because people count on dying so that their cooldowns are back up in time for Ingra. So I would prio In this case, I didn't prio which was probably a mistake for the group, but good for me. So if you are in a coordinated group, you can try running this strategy as well. In this case, the ends up dying along with a buff. So you can also see that the Bloodlust has been started already. Your responsibilities in this fight are going to include getting dropping a Tremor Totem whenever a fear is about to go out. Ingra casts a fear for the whole group, so you can stop that with your Tremor Totem. Drummond, as he gets to about 30 to 40%, depending on how fast the DPS is, you want to Lust. You want to Lust before the damage amp phase, because your teammates could use that ramp speed to improve their damage going into the actual amp phase. Not you so much, but the damage amp phase is only 10 to 15 seconds, so it'll outlast. Your Bloodlust will outlast it by 2 or 3 times the amount. As for the damage amp phase, as Enhance, the only thing you can really do is stack all of your cooldowns, so your dogs, your trinket, and your haste buff. You want to make sure you get Drummond in your haste buff, so it's a bit larger. In my case here, because died and I had a hot hand window, I was able to Lava Lash every single GCD. So that's one way that you can actually get a pretty large damage buff to your window. You can see I'm upwards of 40k here. This is definitely an outlier, though. You can't expect to hit 40k unless you save for this window. I think it's unreasonable to expect to hit 40k any other way, unfortunately, as Enhance. You can usually expect at 274 item level, that's about where I am right now, I can expect around 20 to 25k damage when I'm exiting my first phase of damage amps. Once that's over, you won't have as big of a damage amp anymore. At this point, I didn't even have an IQD yet, so I guess I couldn't do anything I couldn't hold my IQD because I don't have one yet. But there you can see the fear was just cast. That was, I think, Eternal Darkness is the fear. So you want to make sure that your Tremor Totem is down. One thing you can do here is get the Tremor Totem Conduit, because Ingra can actually cast Tremor 2 times in a row, and fear 2 times in a row. And I think I've actually wiped to this because the cooldown of Tremor Totem is just too long to actually be used for 2 back-to-back fears from Ingra. So it's one thing you can do. It's a finesse conduit, but that's the fight. Save big cooldowns for the main boss, kill the tree, and then switch back to the main boss. If the main boss has less HP in absolute value than the tree, then you might just opt to kill him instead. This next fight is Mistcaller, the second boss of Mists. The idea with Mistcaller is that you have 2 phases, one normal damage phase, where she'll kick out dodgeballs that you have to dodge, and she'll summon a dog that you have to run from to not get frozen. And then she'll go into another phase where she summons these ads, and they have patterns on their heads. And if you can find out the outlier pattern, then you can kill the ad and return to this phase. Your responsibilities in this fight include hexing the dog. That's the only unique responsibility that you have, but you'll want to obviously contribute to finding the right clone. So here's a dog over to the side. In my case, we have a priest who can do that faster with less GCD investment than I do. So I can ignore the dog in this case, but that's not always the case. So with the second phase, finding the clone is a matter of finding out, completing the sentence, it's the only blank. So in this case, we can see it's the only leaf. There's only one leaf, and it's going to be either the only leaf, the only solid, or the only flower, or sorry, the only circle, right? But all of those have duplicates, so this is the outlier. So you have to kill that clone. But the important thing to note is for min-maxing your damage on this phase, what you want to do is get as many flame shocks out without wasting time as possible. So now the Mistcaller has flame shock. This fake clone has flame shock on it, and this clone is about to have Primordial Wave flame shock on it. So now I can actually get a large haste buff, a 30% haste buff on a otherwise single target fight. So like most fights with Enhance, it'll come down to just, optimizing your rotation to account for periodic adds that come in, so you can get larger haste buffs with Primordial Wave. The fight otherwise is pretty repetitive. It's a long fight. I usually send most of my cooldowns on pull. We usually lust on pull. This season, damage is so high that often you won't even have a chance to lust on pull here, because here you can see I'm hexing the Vulpin. I also drop a slow totem just to buy more time, so the Vulpin doesn't get to the group. The timers in dungeons right now are very skewed because damage is so high. So it's often the case that you won't even get lust back up until a couple of minutes into this fight, if that. But assuming you have lust up on this fight, you want to use lust, IQD, dogs, everything on pull. That's your best damage amp phase, or sorry, your best opportunity to do large damage. Otherwise, don't try to damage her at all in this phase. She's immune to everything. Just get the ad down as fast as possible. If you want, you could hold your Primordial Wave buff until just as the ad's about to die, so you can get a larger damage amp phase through your haste buff on the Mistcaller priority target, as opposed to just the ads. But that's the fight. You're going to be doing this over and over again. You might get lucky, and she'll bug out and skip one of those phases, but that often doesn't happen. So you'll have to just strap in for the long haul here. This next fight, the last fight in Mists, is Tred'ova. Tred'ova is a kind of annoying boss fight for melee in general. Tred'ova has, like other fights, multiple phases. One of the phases includes going into this trance state where he'll spew out AoE on the ground. This move that you see here is Acid Expulsion. The way the Acid Expulsion works is every single time he does it, it'll remember the last place you went, and it'll also hit that place. So you have to keep a mental note of the ways you've dodged this in the past, and try to stay away from other people because you have no idea how they're dodging things. So besides that, there's periodic ad phases, which is great for you because those can be targets of Primordial Wave. The problem, though, with the ads in this ad phase is that the hitbox on Tred'ova is so weird that often Lava Lashing won't spread it to the ads unless they're right on top of him. So you can't actually count on it happening automatically. You might have to go out of your way to flame shock those ads and spread it yourself, and then kick off a Primordial Wave buff. Oftentimes I don't even bother on this boss because as time goes on, you can see that the arena becomes just unplayable. The tank often doesn't move them around enough, or it'll just be too difficult with all the puddles to get across to reach the ads to even lava lash them in the first place. Movement on this boss is very, very difficult. But in terms of damage, in terms of responsibilities for you, what you want to do is focus Tred'ova and decide which of his 2 abilities that are kickable that you will kick. I usually kick the Parasite one because that one is very bad for the group because you basically lose a party member right away, and you have to kill them. I think. Actually, I don't even know what you have to do if that happens. Just don't let it go off because you definitely lose them and they become MC'd. So that one and the The second consumption cast is also kickable, but I let other people deal with that because that's less important. You can dodge that if it's not going off right away. But you can't kick consumption until he takes a certain amount of damage in his shield. That's the only gotcha there. Otherwise, your normal responsibilities include getting and lusting, and lust can be sent right on pull on this boss, assuming your lust timers work out that way. As for min-maxing, it's really all about these ads. These ads have to be the ones that have to be flame shocked, but you can see right now, like, there's no hope I can ever flame shock these ads, right? Like, I can't reach them to lava lash them. I could. Oh, I'm standing in this goo hurts a lot. Don't stand in that goo. I could flame shock them. I probably should have flame shocked a bit more of them, but you can see how difficult it is just to get these ads. Maybe target one as it spawns right away, and then try to flame shock it there, just to at least ensure a 20% haste buff. Otherwise, all you can really do is try to live. Don't step in stuff. There's no damage amp. This is usually a decent fight. Usually not a decent fight for Enhance. In this case, our demo lock got unlucky and had some mistakes, and I think this might even be before he got his tier set. So I'm at 14k. Other classes right now, I'm probably still around 14k, and other classes like, single target specialists, ranged classes are going to be like higher. So don't expect to be top on this one. Just try to not die, not throw, and try to get damage amps through the ad spread on Primordial Wave. We are in Necrotic Wake now. We are on the first boss, Blightbone. Blightbone is a pretty good fight for probably every class in the game because of how it's usually pulled. Usually what you do is you get these orbs. Someone that's Kyrian can get the orbs. Everyone that has an orb will pulse damage around them, and that means that you should be pulling Blightbone in with ads, as many as possible that you can handle. Depending on the week, like Inspiring, it'll be difficult to pull in some of these ads because you can't kick them, so don't do that on Inspiring, for example. But there's plenty of like Patchwork Soldiers and Blight Bags that are around here that you can pull in. The goal here is to just use all of them as funnel on Blightbone. So in terms of your in terms of your responsibilities, nothing special here. You can just do like Cap Totem occasionally to stun stuff and slow them down. Nothing that you have to be in charge of. You're using Bloodlust on pull. As you pull the boss, you'll see you can lust. You can get your Primordial Wave benefits. You can pop your trinkets and everything. And then you just start channeling Lava Lashes into the boss. There's most of the damage on this fight will be done by the weapons, by the orbs. So you won't beat the orbs. There's no chance you'll beat the orbs unless like somebody doesn't get the orbs, obviously. But the main mechanics to worry about here are his vomits. So as he picks someone to vomit on, he'll vomit up maggots onto someone, and that person should stand away from the group. We just stand in the existing vomit pile. That's how we handle it. The maggots can't hit people because they'll accumulate stacks or something, and then they'll explode. So you want to stun the maggots if you can. Don't delete them. A couple of stacks is okay because you want to use them for funnel. So like right now, I'm getting a couple of Lava Lashes out there. Like I'm using them for Primordial Wave. Once you get the wave off, you can just like start doing like Fire Nova and Sundering and stuff like that. If it's a fun run, the tank will pull in more ads after the ads die. I would personally prefer to pull in ads like 3 or 4 at a time, just to like use them for funnel and just have them die passively. The weapons do so much damage that it's like a large opportunity cost to not play that way. In terms of damage, you can expect to do pretty well. We have a Warlock, so so he's doing literally twice the damage of everybody else. Here, you can see the screen froze. That was a real freeze for me, actually. It's not just as the video. Something happened in WoW, and I froze there for a second. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, you'll do okay. This is a pretty good fight for you. It's a good fight for everybody though. Like anyone that has like any AoE or any single target, you'll tell that they all do different compositions of damage. Like some do more damage to the boss as opposed to the AoE, but this is a decent boss fight. Very fun, very easy. It's just like, a ton of damage. The second boss of Necrotic Wake is Amarth. The one thing I would say to do in preparation for this, if you do the pack before Amarth down below, then I would aim for getting Vi, because you don't want to get 2 Urs back to back. So if you can get Vi down below, get the large haste buff for yourself, and then get up here, that would be the best thing you can do to min-max damage outside of the battle. As for Amarth itself, what Amarth does is periodically summons ads that have to die before the phase ends, or else they all explode and kill you. That's really the only thing he does. Like, he does like some obvious things, like, you know, frontal, don't get hit by the frontal. He just spins around in circles, like breathing out green fire. That, and he has a cast. You can kick the cast. Just make sure that if you kick the cast, that if you do need the kick for the ad phase to pull in some of the ads, that you won't be like losing out on that. So I do 1 Lashing Flames onto and then I switched over to a Marth. Then in terms of responsibilities, everyone has to help out here in some way. Like, there's a mage out in the far corner. I don't kick him. Looks like the DK kicked him in. So anything that you can do to get these ads grouped up so that you can all like kill them before the phase ends. And obviously, this is the perfect time to send out Primordial Wave if it happened to reset from like the last phase. Don't get hit by if it's still up. Your big responsibility here is getting these ads down. If there's a chance you don't get the ad down, then it's also true that if the ad dies, or sorry, if the ad is stunned while Amarth is doing his final recall that would have killed you, then you can avoid the damage. So if you save Cap Totem for emergencies, you might be able to live through something that you couldn't have lived through. But otherwise, you're saving your Primordial Wave for these ad phases. I have a large Mastery buff back up to 75%. It's like having Bloodlust all over again. Usually you do Bloodlust this boss, but the timers in this dungeon have become so weird that you may not have the ability to. Like, we're getting here less than 10 minutes after the first boss. So, and this is on a 23. So, in Pugs, you may not have it. If you don't get it here, then you might just send it on the first pack of trash upstairs because you want to have it for the last boss for sure. Usually you do last boss in this dungeon. So it's very hard to know. Like, I send it right when we get it here because it's like it's now or never, basically. Like, if we're not going to do it here, then we're not going to use like another lust in the entire dungeon because we have to have it later. But otherwise, this is a pretty good fight for Enhance. I think I'm doing pretty poorly here, but I'm doing pretty well on the boss in terms of like boss damage. So I'm not doing a lot of like AoE at all. I'm just using them completely for funnel. I've had higher encounters. I've had lower encounters. It's a little bit RNG, but this is a decent fight for Enhance. You're not a warlock, right? So don't look at the warlock. They're broken. It is decent for Enhance. Next up is Stitchflesh, the third boss of Necrotic Wake. This boss is one of the most complicated bosses for Pugs. In my experience, if I'm going to fail timing a dungeon, it's going to be on this boss because a Pug doesn't know how to do the mechanic. The mechanic is kind of hard to explain. You'll see it as it happens, but basically somebody is targeted with a hook from one of these creations, and that person has to aim the hook at the boss to pull the boss down. Otherwise, if you don't do that even one time, the fight snowballs, and it may become unwinnable. So this becomes a pretty big wall for Pugs. I usually don't send Primordial Wave on start. I usually hold Primordial Wave for the boss phase. Now, you could gamble and do it, because you do have to do priority damage to and this creation has to die eventually anyway. So you might gamble and hope for a reset on Primordial Wave, but I just hold it because it's really important that you get boss damage in on this fight. There's no responsibilities or damage amps that you can really that you have to pay attention to. The responsibilities are just the basic ones for the fight. The mechanics, if you're targeted with this line, this hook arrow, then make sure that ends up going to the boss. The next phase has an even more complicated version of this that we'll go over when we get there. So we pull it down. You have to coordinate beforehand who uses what weapons. Usually you don't use Bloodlust on this boss. Usually you do like 2 spears on this boss on like a Tyrant week. On a fortified week, maybe you just use 1 spear. That can probably be okay, but usually you don't use Lust. Usually you do a weapon and then you just do a ton of damage here. You've got 3 targets at this point. You'll probably still have up, for better or worse, which means that the tank will be in a little bit of danger. So let's see what we can do next. That's how we win max this fight. Is we use Stitchflesh creations to get larger Primordial Waves. If we can, we probably should be switching over to the but the second phase, 2 things happen. Someone gets targeted with the arrow, with the hook, and somebody else gets targeted by Stitchflesh. So it's up to the person that gets targeted by Stitchflesh to kite them into the path of this arrow to stop the Stitchflesh mechanic of fixation. So that time, it worked out just fine. I don't think that we were actually doing it correctly, but he did get hit by the hook. But keep an eye out for that. The next thing that has to happen is the hook will come out again, and Stitchflesh will jump back up. So whoever gets targeted by this hook, in which case it's me. Do I do it? I think I don't do it. You can see it's just slightly off center from Stitchflesh. So you've got to be like very, very careful about aiming this hook. It's very, very finicky, and you can't stand anywhere near the front of him. So that didn't count. So this is the kind of thing that gets very scary. Like if one person messes up, then you get an additional creation, and these things like snowball really fast. Everybody's taking like pulsing AoE damage. These hooks have to be pointed in different ways. So now, if that happens to you, then you have to try to do the right thing. Like the person that has the Stitchflesh creation closer to the boss should be the hook person, and this person should make sure that the hook doesn't like tank this one's hook. Like it's very, very complicated to explain. But at this point, we do have 2 creations up, so we have 3 targets for Primordial Wave. So now I sent a weapon there, I think. We sent, 1 weapon on the first phase, 1 weapon on the second phase. Weapons do a damage amp, so now you can send everything you have. Make sure you don't die. Pop Astral Shift if you have to. I think I just popped Astral Shift, yeah. Use your potions, your health pots, whatever you have. We messed up the mechanic here, which means that our our booning priest couldn't get the boon off. But this is one of the hardest fights. And we just somehow got the hook there. I'm pretty sure we get this hook. I think that was the Warlock. So, congrats to the Warlock. That was a very difficult aim that they just pulled off. But this is the entire fight. Using Primordial Wave on the boss damage phases. And making sure you don't kill these poor rogue. Making sure you don't kill these creations prematurely because you need them to actually hook the boss down. So, don't be the person that's like standing there killing the creation while it's hooking, and then it dies, and then now the boss doesn't come down, right? Don't be that person. You don't need to kill the boss, kill the thing during that period of time. Just make sure you get your Primordial Waves in while the boss is down, and ideally while the ads are up, which they probably will be. Nalthor is the final boss of Necrotic Wake. Nalthor, very, very annoying boss. He has a bunch of mechanics that are very annoying, and they ruin your DPS. Your overall here will depend entirely on RNG, whether or not Nalthor picks you to go down below. I think I probably get picked. I always get picked. I don't know why. That's just how it is. Usually what you'll do on Nalthor is somebody will spear at the start, and you'll lust at the start. So there are no ads that you can use for boss damage in this phase. All you can do is make sure you get right away and use the relics for the large buff. That'll be very helpful. Send Lust. Do I send Lust? Oh no, I don't have Lust yet. I fat fingered Lust on the previous pull. I was going to send it, I think, but I don't have it here. So these are little things that you have to just like. I'm doing 23s now and 24s, and I still make these mistakes. So I'm still not used to being like a Lust class. Oh, and that hits me. I tried to dodge the wrong way. So yeah, this is not a great fight for Enhance. Obviously, every fight you start off really strong because you have the relics, but then as time goes on, like, you know, on these no ad boss fights, it gets like very difficult. You can use for as long as you can, but this fight is actually really hard for the tank. So the tank is not going to want to be up for a long time because it's really hard for tanks. Nalthor like trucks them, and it's like physical and magic. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so if you're rooted, don't break this root because everybody else around it will get hit. Wait for them to get out. You'll get dispelled. All you can really do here is hope you don't get picked by mechanics. Your uptime is going to be abysmal because of these mechanics. And if you get sent down below, which maybe I do. Let's see if I get sent down below ever. Yeah, so I'm sent down below. So okay, let me rewind. I'm going to get picked right now. I got picked because I think our rogue vanishes when the rogue is targeted, so he just like sends it to somebody else like a jerk. But you're decent at going down here. So honestly, like you might as well go down. Like this is this is like difficult for mages actually. I've been doing this in Arcane Mage, and this thing is like not easy to kill, because you have to sit there and cast. But you can just like lava lash it like 3 times and it's dead. So you can heal yourself as well. It's not bad for you to get sent down. Like you don't really have any big damage outside of that opener anyway. So if you can get sent down, then like don't be too mad about it. You'll be helping your team do more damage. As you get back up, make sure you run to a corner and prepare to drop this puddle. Yeah, after you get sent back up, you drop a puddle. If you drop it in the corner, then it won't expand out as far. So that's the secret to the puddle. Just pick a corner where nobody is. If you drop it in the middle, then it'll be very bad, obviously. But you can feral lunge out of it so that you don't take too much damage while it expands under you. This is a bad boss fight for Enhance. You can expect to be lowest like most times, unless you're never sent down at all, in which case you might be not lowest. This is not a great boss fight for Enhance. Next up is Globgrog, the first boss of Plaguefall. The basic mechanics of this boss are pretty simple. He doesn't have any phases per se. He just has a couple of abilities you have to watch out for. One of them stomps you away. One of them does a massive frontal that you get out of. And one of them summons slimes, of which the largest one definitely cannot reach him. So your group will have to CC them. What we're doing right now is we're dragging this red slime up from the area down below, up ahead. Usually what you want to do is skip this boss, go up ahead, and get this red slime. As a Necrolord, you can trigger the dungeon benefit of being a Necrolord, which is when this slime is dead, if your Necrolord shield is on cooldown, you get a large haste buff. Also, if this red puddle is on the ground and you stand in it, you get another really, really large haste buff. So any secret to doing large damage on this boss is going to depend on your group doing these two things. Sometimes pugs don't do it. I don't know why. It's very easy to do, and it's very fun. So you'll have to just like, grind your teeth through those tanks that decide not to do it for some strange reason. But your responsibilities here are actually very limited. You don't have a lot of responsibilities on this fight. You can't do very much. You can slow down the ads as they approach if your group is going to opt to kill those ads. Sometimes you don't bother killing the small ads because you're doing so much damage that it's too much of a damage loss to get out of the puddle. You can cap totem them. That's basically it. You can't CC anything. Your team has to do that. So we're about to start this fight. The first thing you're going to want to do, like every fight, is get That's what you want to do, is immediately get your you want to save all of your cooldowns for this fight, obviously. Save your trinket, save your dogs, and then Bloodlust on start, and then get your tank to drag it to the puddle. You can see, once you're in the puddle, I have 256% haste. So that means that you're going to be lava lashing almost every single global. And I wouldn't worry too much about even using Primordial Wave after this point, as long as you're in the puddle, because another 10% haste on top of your 256% haste isn't going to be very important. It's going to be a drop in the bucket. So this is like a unique fight where you don't have to necessarily leverage the ads that come out. You can use Feral Lunge to get back into range on this fight. You can see my IQD procced Mastery, and I'm doing a massive amount of damage being in this puddle. I'm using Lava Lash almost every single ability. I'm doing like upwards of 60k at the peak, and this boss just gets completely eliminated. This is somewhat of an outlier on this poll. We kill the boss in 40 seconds. What you can usually expect is probably somewhere around 20 to 30k DPS. I did get a lot of good procs. I got a good dog, but that's a secret to our burst, right? If we want to do large burst, then what we have to do is get lucky and line everything up to give the RNG gods a chance to bless us. That's how Enhance works. In terms of min-maxing, that's all you really can do. You don't have to worry about ads or anything on this fight because the damage amp from the puddle is so much larger. And what you can expect to do very well in this fight. We are a class that scale well with haste. And if Warlocks didn't exist, you might even expect to be always the top damage on this fight. So Warlocks do exist, so if you have one, maybe you'll be the second damage on this fight because they also scale very well with haste. But this is a very good fight for you. So expect to do a lot of dam, hold all your cooldowns, get that red slime buff, and then you'll do very well. The second boss in Plaguefall is Dr. Ickus, and it's similar to the first in terms of setup. The basic mechanics are that he'll jump from platform to platform. He'll summon a bomb ooze. That bomb ooze has to be killed before it explodes. He'll also summon these purple oozes that, if they're near him, will give him a big damage reduction. So your team has to decide, are you going to kill the purple oozes or are you going to CC the purple oozes? I always opt for CCing them because I have a Warlock, and Banish makes it so that they can definitely be CC'd. They can't be broken. So having a Warlock is really valuable on this fight. The first phase, you want to pull him to the platform that has the puddle. You don't want to lust in the first phase because you have the puddle. So you'll wait until later to do that. You can usually start off pretty strong on this fight. Like you'll do pretty well, with the obvious caveat that, you know, Warlocks exist in this patch, so you won't do that well. But the problem with this fight is that the movement is so intense and the target switching is frequent enough that, yeah, so now we do no damage right now. Like, now I'm going to stay in this puddle and kill and then I'll have to run across the map, and I do no damage the entire time. So this fight is going to be nowhere near as good as Globgrog. I would call this an average fight for Enhance. Like, we do pretty well. We don't do terrible. It's not a awful fight. I think this is, like, you know, middle of the pack fight for us. In terms of responsibilities, you can't do that much aside from potentially, you know, soaking a stray ooze or contributing to your team's damage on the bomb. We don't have any CC or utility stuff that we can do. We want to lust usually on the second platform, so we have lust up to kill the bomb. Maybe you can slow down the slime to make it easier for your team to CC them, but there's nothing that specifically you're going to be doing besides avoiding the mechanics. In terms of min-maxing, there are ads on this fight, so you can use them to get larger haste buffs on your Primordial Wave. So that means waiting for the bomb to summon before using your Primordial Wave. So right here, once the bomb summons, we'll use Primordial Wave, and then we'll send it right there. So now we have a 20%. It could have been a bit larger with this congealed slime over there, but once he's banished, you can't count on actually using him. So it's sort of a gamble, or if you want to try and coordinate that somehow, then you can try and do that. But usually you'll be getting 2 to 3 stacks of your Primordial Wave. You could use this ooze, but the ooze usually doesn't summon out at the same time the bomb summons out. So not a lot of opportunity here to do much better. And like I said, you can expect to be, you know, like average DPS on this fight. Like here, our Warlock is doing, like, you know, almost twice my damage, but only because he's a Warlock. Our damage is pretty good otherwise, though. This next boss is the third boss of Plaguefall, Domina Venomblade. Domina is a 2-phase encounter that repeats, like is commonly the case in WoW. The first phase is just doing regular damage. She'll pick somebody. Right now she picked me to get stunned in a couple of seconds. So you want to get out of the pack because anybody else in this circle will get stunned as well. You want to use a DR like Astral Shift, or maybe just turn into a Ghost Wolf just to mitigate some of the damage it does. But that's all. This is the second phase. The second phase has ads, invisible ads spawning around the room. You can help your tank by putting a cap totem or a slow totem in them that should reveal them. And afterwards, if you can, focus mostly on doing your single target rotation. Don't do a lot of Fire Novas because those ads are very valuable for a lot of classes, including us, for min-maxing our damage. Our responsibilities include just helping the tank to move around and CC or reveal these hidden ads. That's really all that we have to worry about in this fight. Otherwise, we want to save our Primordial Waves for large haste buffs on these windows where the ads come up. That's going to be the way that we get a lot of damage in this fight. This fight is actually really good. The ads come out at pretty regular phases around your Primordial Wave, and if you get resets, then you can hold your Primordial Waves for additional ad phases, and you end up being, like, you know, having a pretty large haste buff for the majority of this fight almost. You can see in this fight, I'm finally doing more damage than a demo lock, which is like a rare sight. So you can see right here, we get the ads, we send our Primordial Wave, and we're back up to 73% haste. We were, you know, we dipped below 50% haste for a while over there, which is pretty scary, but ads come back up, and we just use that to channel Lava Lashes in to Domina Venomblade. And if your team is good, then they won't kill those ads very fast. The only thing that we have to worry about is our Warlock imploding onto the boss and killing the ads. But if you have like a Windwalker in your group or a Fury Warrior, like they're just gonna blow it. They're gonna just delete all the ads. They're gonna pad their overall, and then your single target boss damage is gonna suffer. So here you can see I do it again. I'm back up to 86% haste. You want to use Primordial Wave on as many ad phases as you can. I usually send all of my cooldowns right away though, in terms of like Primordial Wave, Dogs, and Trinket, because the beginning of the boss is also ads, right? You have the relics there, so you might as well just send it there while it's guaranteed, and not have to worry about fishing for it. Here, I hard cast a Primordial Wave while the ads are still out, just to secure the haste buff. I couldn't get all of them, but I couldn't wait for the Maelstrom to proc to generate like a larger lightning bolt. So you can expect to do very well in this fight. This is a really good fight for Enhance. I don't bother tabbing among the ads. Don't lava lash them at all. Like, don't spread your lashing flames to them. It's not worth it. They're gonna die passively anyway, and you want them to be up there as long as possible. Like, if you could, you would just like CC them off to the side and like never let them get to you. Keep them up like forever. Like that would be like the ideal case. Otherwise, yeah, simple fight for you. No lust. That is never a lust fight, because the last boss is next, and that's a lust fight. The last fight of Plaguefall is Margrave Stred'ova. Very complicated fight. She has 3 phases. First phase, every single main phase is her being alive and her summoning this ad that the tank has to soak the frontal of. So that happens 3 times. While that's happening, you'll have to dodge all of these tentacles, and then she goes down into her puddle, and then during that phase, there's more tentacle dodging, and there's ads that you have to kill, and be careful to not pull aggro from, because they will one-shot you if they touch you, and that'll be very bad. Usually lust on the second phase of this boss, because everyone has lots of damage cooldowns for the first phase, and if these phases go too long, then you'll end up getting 2 of these ads at once, and both of them will have to be soaked. So you don't want that to ever happen. So phase 2 is good for lust, because it evens out the damage profile and guarantees that won't actually happen. In terms of responsibilities, not a lot of responsibilities. Your team should decide who is going to prio who, because that ad has to die. I usually prio the ad here. So otherwise, we start off the way we expect to. We get our Primordial Wave buff. We send our Trinket. We send our Dogs. And we're just like pumping Lava Lashes into Margrave. I usually switch over to the spawn, and the rogue that we have usually switches over to the main target. Be very careful here, because will do the frontal in the same spot, most likely, that the tank has to soak the Buster in. So you might opt instead to get the down faster, just to eliminate the possibility. And like every boss and thing in Plaguefall, get the red slime. There's a red slime that's in the room off to the side of this chamber. So that is a very large damage amp. Oh, sorry, yeah, a very large damage amp. I got melee'd there. You see that? If your tank steps away from melee range for even a moment, then Margrave will melee the first person that she can find. But you can use the ads in terms of min-maxing. You can use these ads a lot for your Primordial Wave. So I'm back up to, I can't actually tell what that gave me, because we also have Bloodlust here. But you can tell, like, Bloodlust makes a very large difference here on this phase. We have Dogs, we have Lust, we have Primordial Wave. That thing just died in a couple of seconds, basically. And Stred'ova should be going down soon as well. We're also getting very lucky with the puddle placement and the spawn locations. So we can stand in these puddles, make sure not to kill yourself in the puddle. It does damage you. So your healer has to be on board with healing you guys while you're doing this. But you benefit a lot from haste. This fight is usually a pretty good fight for you, even though the uptime is low, because the uptime is low for everybody. So it's all equalized. I usually try to leave these ads up a little bit. Like that guy over there still has Flame Shock on him. So now we have 2 targets for our Primordial Wave. Now you could gamble and use it now, but other ads are coming. I tend to just like send it if I can, because I want to make sure I get some benefit from that thing, even though at this point you see now there's like 3 other ones. So maybe I should have held it, but those are the ads you can use to get larger Primordial Waves on this fight. Otherwise, just don't die. Like, you can expect to do pretty well on this fight, well enough that you'll be close to a Warlock. Otherwise, just these tentacles have very large ranges. Don't dodge it right along the visible area because it's actually wider than it seems. Don't stand in this middle area because if you stand in the middle area, then the tentacle will count as hitting you. I think that was a change Blizzard made because people were just stepping into the middle area to dodge tentacles early on. So they changed it to just kill you if there's a tentacle up and you're in there as like a way of forcing you to do their mechanics. So that's how you do the last boss of Lakefall and what to expect. We're in Sanguine Depths now, and we're looking at the first boss, who is Kryxis. Kryxis isn't a great fight for Enhance as PLA because there's not many there's no ads you can use to pump up your primordial waves. So you'll be doing okay on this fight. You'll definitely won't be top compared to like warlocks or single target spect classes. Even rogues can probably beat you in this fight. You'll start this fight off in terms of responsibilities. You don't really have any. Just do the normal mechanics. Nothing unique to you. And the normal mechanics are when you're targeted by him, get behind other teammates because the more people he hits in his charge, the more spread the damage will be. So you have to make sure your teammates live. And he'll make everybody explode with an orb. You want to get far away from him so that the orb travels over a long enough distance so that it gives your team the flexibility to trigger the orbs when they can handle them. I usually Feral Lunge immediately as I'm hit, and if you do that, you can get right back to the boss without having to run. Now, as these orbs hit people, they just do a lot of damage, so as long as your healer is like ready to heal through it, then you can do it. Don't run through all of them at once and soak them all because you'll die. Everybody will die, and everyone will hate you. Some classes have immunities, so they can go off to the side. If you see somebody go off to the side, it usually means that they have an immunity, and you don't have to help soak the boss charge. They're going to take no damage from it. So you have no immunity, though, so you can't do that. In terms of min-maxing, there's not a lot you can do on this fight, unfortunately. All you can really do is hope for procs, use your IQD and everything as you can on cooldown, use your wolves on cooldown, basically. Make sure you're not going to do it just before the Severing Smash because then you can't actually hit him and follow up on that haste buff, right? So that's the only thing to really watch out for. Making sure you get is the most valuable thing you can do as a shaman. Otherwise, you're just doing pretty okay single target damage here. You can expect to be like most classes in this fight because most people won't be speccing like raid builds in this fight. So you'll be similar to them, but if it's like I would think like a decent mage would be better than you. Warlocks will be better than you unless they're Destro for some reason. Maybe it's a fort week. Maybe they won't be better than you then. But yeah, this fight pretty simple, pretty long. Not a lot of opportunity to excel. The second boss of Sanguine Depths is Executioner Tarvold. This is a pretty hard fight because of camera angles and how narrow the corridors are. There's a lot of things to dodge. In terms of mechanics, you can see I'm getting targeted with the first mechanic over here, which is just like pulsing damage on and around some target. You want to use Astral Shift for that, or Ghost Wolf, anything you can do to decrease that damage. And make sure you're away from people, and you don't force them to get away from the boss. There's an ad phase, which is the source of the min-max that we can do on this fight. There's an ad that comes up. That ad has to die right away. So depending on the key level, you might consider just primordial waving him as opposed to Tarvold to give the damage amp on him. But either way, you want to make sure he's in the damage amp as well. I think I've actually messed up a little bit there. I didn't use it. Oh, maybe I did use it. I have 77. Okay, I used it. Good job, bolts. You want to make sure he dies right away. He does pulsing damage, and it's a lot for your healer to handle. He has this curse dot that he puts out, and that can overlap on the same person as the pulsating beam that he puts out. So you want to just make it as easy as possible for your healer to heal those people. In terms of responsibilities, just doing damage on this guy. Nothing special for enhancement. Making sure if you have Primordial Wave, you use it on this part to get a larger buff is about the most you can do to make sure that you're doing as much damage as you can do on this fight. Save your Fleshcraft for when you're targeted if you can, which means holding it a little bit until that next Castigate is going to come out. You don't want to hold it too long because you want the Mastery buff to do damage, obviously, but if you can use it for that, then you definitely should. Um, those beams that travel along the side of the room, if they hit you, they give you a curse, which I'm pretty sure just does damage. You can dispel that curse. Try not to get hit by it, of course. If you do get hit by it, you can dispel yourself. If everybody gets hit by it, I would dispel the healer, not the tank, and not yourself, because you'll probably be less important than the healer in this fight. But you do have to do damage. I would call this a average fight for Enhance. The problem with this fight, while it does have ads, is your uptime is severely hindered, and it's also hindered in an RNG way. Like right now, all this pulsing damage, you'll probably have to get out pretty soon if you're targeted, or you'll have to jump back and forth to avoid those those beams, which I just didn't avoid. There's a lot going on in this fight, and every single mechanic forces you to kind of get away from the boss. So that uptime hit will definitely severely impact your damage, even though there's ads. That's kind of just what you have to expect on this fight. You can't really get around that, unfortunately. But if you can use the ad for your primordial wave, that's basically the best you can do in terms of min-maxing. Nothing special for you to do. Lust may happen on this boss. It may happen on the next boss. You have to ask your team. I usually save it for the next boss because the next boss has even worse phases of low uptime. So I prefer it there. The third boss of Sanguine Depths is the Grand Proctor, Beryllia. So her deal, she has two phases. One is just doing normal damage, and the second one is collecting a bunch of orbs. Every single orb gives you 20% DR for the ability that she's about to do to you, which is like a big AoE ability. You need probably, depending on your key level, for weekly keys, you can probably live with 2 and Ghost Wolf. For higher keys, like 20s and up, you want to aim for 4 if you can get them. Like, see, I just got 3, and I was alive by 10% of my health. So that was a big mistake. This was a 20. I think it was like the first 20 I did as Enhancement Shaman for this season on Sanguine Depths. So you want more than 3 if you can. And you want Ghost Wolf. 4 is like pretty comfortable. Use Astral Shift, use Fleshcraft to survive that. This is a very bad fight for like every class in the game, actually. It's actually not a bad fight for Arcane because you can get all of your damage out during these phases, and then you can just run around and, do your thing for this phase, and it won't matter too much. I'm taking a ton of damage here. I'm also failing to use Astral Shift. So this was early on in the Shaman career. In terms of damage optimization, there's like no chance of optimization on this fight. Like you're running around forever. There's no ads. You're only getting 10% haste buffs from your primordial wave. Even if you're Witch Doctor Wolfbones, your uptime would be abysmal here. It would maybe be a bit higher, but you can tell I'm under rogue here. And this was before tier as well. So I'm under a no tier rogue here. If you can coordinate, that guy just went into my quadrant and took my orb. So if you can coordinate who takes which orbs, usually it's a free-for-all on Pugs, and it's every man for himself, and whoever gets the orb, and otherwise you're going to die. This is just like, it's a very bad fight. There's nothing you can do in terms of utility to really help. All of your tremor, your cap, your slow, like none of that matters at all. The only chance you can do anything better is on the start when the relics are up. Make sure you get a big haste buff there, and then just buckle up, because this is going to be a long fight, unfortunately. The next fight is General Kaal. I'll include the Gauntlet because technically she's a part of the Gauntlet as well. I think you go from like 100 to 70% in the Gauntlet, and then 70 to 50 or something in the real boss fight. But how this works is you start off in the Gauntlet. It's her going through a bunch of other little ads. So you have to kill her. You get her down to breakpoints every 10%, and she'll go to the next section of the Gauntlet. Then you kill these ads that are like around her. And this is a decent place for you because you can get max value primordial waves. And I wouldn't worry at all about tabbing or doing any lashing flames. I would worry just about General Kaal. Like, your team can handle all of the AoE. You can throw out Fire Novas, that's fine. But don't spend your spenders on Chain Lightning, just spend it on Lightning Bolt. Unless you want to, pad damage meters, basically. That's the only reason to do otherwise. Your damage here, like, Like we're all doing comparable damage, but all of my damage is like priority target damage onto the boss, and the boss is what matters on this gauntlet. Like usually in pugs, you'll notice that this area, everything dies besides Kaal first, and then everybody is just doing single target damage on Kaal. So that's a little silly to be in that position. Don't even worry about it. Just don't worry about the overall on this phase. You'll have a much faster dungeon time if you focus on Kaal. As you go to the next section, you basically just want to repeat what you did in the first section. Like you target Kaal. If you can get a flame shock out onto somebody else first, just to up the amount of flame shocks that you have. I think I failed to do it here. This is still early in my shaman career, but I get a big lightning bolt off on her. Get my big haste buff, and now I'm doing lava lashes with fire dogs. So you'll be low on this portion of the boss for a while. You'll be low in the beginning, and you'll raise as time goes on because you don't have really any cooldowns to worry about. You're always just doing like your max damage, basically. Aside from having, dogs and IQD, that's the only hit that you're taking ever on this entire gauntlet, and that's really it. Like you want to make sure that your tank will be in control of this part, like being in range of these urns, so that you can get damage buffs as these enemies die in the urns. But in terms of priority here, completely focus on Kaal, lava lash into her. Don't worry about any of the ads. Still do kicks. You can still do cap totems. Like all of that is a good idea, but just do complete funnel. This is the strength of PLA here. This is something like a Skybreaker's build couldn't do. A Witch Doctor's Wolf Bones would be doing a lot less funnel here because they can't leverage these ads for funnel. So if we skip ahead to the real boss fight, which is right here after this tiny room, she has different mechanics now. Now she does. Now she jumps to 2 targets and bleeds them. She applies a bleed to them, and you have to dodge these like horizontal beams or vertical beams that she summons. It'll be obvious what to do with those beams. Technically speaking, you can dodge this bleed. I find it very hard to do as a shaman, and I'll have to get better about doing this in higher tyrannical keys because I can't consistently do it. But in theory, if you were to trigger your spirit walk as she's charging you, like I'm trying to do it right now, but she still gets me. So you have to be moving faster, I think. You might be able to like feral lunge to her as she charges to you to get far enough away so that she doesn't apply the bleed. It's very hard to do as a shaman. As a mage, you just blink away, so that's pretty easy. So I would just make sure you save your astral shift for when you're targeted with this bleed. See, I'm targeted again with it here, and I ran right there. I avoided the bleed. I ran with Spirit Walk on me, and I was fast enough so that she couldn't reach me. So that's how you avoid the bleed. I would call this fight a lower average fight for Enhance because you can get very unlucky, like I'm getting unlucky here, and you can get targeted with every single bleed and get very little uptime, and there's no ads on this fight. And you have no responsibilities that you can really take upon yourself to contribute to the fight with. Like there's no ads to CC or anything like that. There's no ads to get Primordial Wave buffs on. It's pure single target aside from that first part with relics. So this is not a great fight. You can expect to be like average here. Ranged classes should be doing better than you on this fight because they can, maintain uptime during these phases where everybody has to run. The best you can really do is not get hit by these mechanics and hope that you don't get picked very often. First boss of Spires of Ascension. This is an okay boss fight. You have no unique responsibilities here as a shaman. What you want to do is just respect the mechanics. The mechanics are pretty simple. There's 2 bosses, and there's a link between them. You can't step in the link, ever. If you do, you get a big damage dot. That, and you can't get hit by these orbs. So those are the main 2 mechanics. Also, the boss will periodically fly up into the air, and then while in the air, throw spears. And make sure you move out of the group if the spear targets you, because it does like a bunch of damage on the ground. So, pretty simple boss fight. It's not terrible. There's a couple of things you can do to min-max this boss fight. You want to make sure that as the boss is flying up top, you reapply your Flame Shock to it. So you want to make sure that both of them have Flame Shock on them at all times. If you can, I would focus on I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in this VOD, but if you focus on the human while she's on the ground, then you'll make sure that she has Lashing Flames on her for the entirety of her ascent. Yeah, so now I apply Lashing Flames to her, and she's going to go up top, and she'll have Lashing Flames, and she'll have a Flame Shock. I should do it again if I think this is probably an earlier. Yeah, so I missed my chance to do it again. So you won't have it on the entire ascent up there, but this is an okay boss fight for you. Other classes that do better 2-target cleave will do better. Like I think this is probably like a really good Destro Warlock fight, even if they weren't broken. Just because they have a lot of like 2-target cleave with Havoc, range 2-target cleave. So I would say this is a decent boss fight. I would expect to be towards the top, slightly above average, on this kind of a fight. Like other classes that do better 2-target cleave will be better than you. Like an Arms Warrior probably does really well in this fight, but we do pretty well as well. So I'm not angry at this fight. The one thing I wish is that tanks could group up these mobs like a bit more aggressively when they're fighting. It's actually kind of a tricky boss fight to group up though for a lot of tanks. It's really easy for a Brewmaster Monk to group them up because you can just roll ahead of where the ad is going without worrying about actually getting hit by the that magic dot, the link between them. It's okay for Venthyr tanks. Like if you're going to be Venthyr as a Blood DK, then you can just TP over there, or you can AMS through the link. It's just hard to like avoid the link, unfortunately. And as you're trying to run, the boss is going to do a frontal, which will like back attack you. So that's why bosses find this difficult. That's why tanks find this difficult to position the bosses. But for you, it's an okay boss fight. Like just use all of your stuff on cooldown. On Tyran weeks, you'll be using Lust on this boss. Fortified weeks, you won't be using Lust on this boss. You'll probably be using Lust on the first pull because it's a large first pull with like 6 or 7 mobs, but it's an okay boss fight. The second boss in Spires is Ventunax. This is going to be a not great boss fight for Enhance. Ventunax will do this teleport mechanic away, like you just saw right there, and in its wake, it will drop this little black puddle thing that shoots out these little boop balls. I'm not sure what to call them, but you basically have to not get hit by the boop balls. The tank should be making the boop balls relatively close so that you can go to the other side and have an easier time of dodging the boop balls. And it's up to you to find like a camera angle that's like humanly usable in any way, because this game is crazy like that, to actually see where the boop balls are coming from. So there's no ads on this fight. It's there's not a lot of chance to like min-max your damage. There's no responsibilities that you have that are unique to Enhance. You have to just not get hit by boop balls. Like that's the only goal you have. And this flash. Yeah, if you're in front of her, if you're looking at her when you're in front of the flash, then you'll get like blinded and it'll hurt you a lot. Like that's what this fight is. So it's really on the boss to move the boss. Sorry, it's on the tank to move the boss correctly. You can't do all that much to make your damage better. You can feral lunge and try to maintain uptime a bit easier. Just don't get tricked into getting blinded. No ads to pad with, no ads to funnel with. You should be as good as any melee DPS on this fight. And ranged classes may or may not do better than you. They get targeted with the mechanic. So like right there, the ranged classes get targeted with like this big heavy dot damage. And they're pretty close to the balls probably as well. So they have their own problems. It's not a great fight for most people. There's no damage amps or ads, so it's okay. Just don't get hit by balls. The third boss of SoA is, actually I've never even said this name out loud. It's Oryphrion. I'm not actually sure how you say this, but this is an okay boss fight, not a great boss fight. The mechanics are, I thought that was on me, so I moved the same way that the rogue moved, unfortunately. The mechanics here are mostly the balls. It's all about the balls. So everyone's targeted with this thing, and then balls drop on wherever you were, and the tank has to move the boss out of the ball area. The one thing you have to make sure to not mess up besides obviously moving the balls out, don't stand in the front of the boss, because if you do, then the boss will trigger a frontal, and all of her mechanics depend on like this energy concept that she has. So she has like 40 energy right now. This ball thing costs apparently 25 energy. A frontal costs something else. So knowing when the next phase is going to come, which the next phase is a damage amp phase, it's the important part. Knowing when that comes depends on basically her current energy. So one of her blasts costs 5 energy. So if she were to blast again, so she has 2 blasts left, I think, at this rate, before she'll trigger a stomp. So a stomp, sorry, before she triggers her damage amp. A stomp also apparently costs 5. So right now, she's going to blast me. Her energy will go from 5 to 0. So I can, at this point, start to do my damage ramp. So I can start my dogs right now because we're going to be going into the damage amp phase right now. At this point, you have to stand out of the way of the balls because the tank has to go and soak all of these balls. They will come in and they can't reach her. Otherwise, they give her like a bunch of health or strength or something. I don't know. Whatever happens, if they get to her, it's bad. They damage the tank a lot, but tanks are pretty good at soaking these balls, especially Blood DK. DPS should never soak the balls. If the tank isn't soaking the balls and you have to, then that's terrible. So, I mean, you might have to because the tank doesn't know any better. Maybe they're a new player, but that's how it'll work. The reason that this is a bad boss, so there is a damage amp, and in theory, this is something. It's a similar boss to the first boss in Mists, but on the first boss in Mists, you have 2 ads. Sorry, you have 2 bosses, so you can get a 20% haste buff as opposed to just like the 10% haste buff over here. And this damage amp isn't as dramatic as the Mists damage amp. So I found that while I do more damage in the damage amp, I can't actually get it anywhere near the level of Mists. So I find this ends up being like a really bad boss fight for me. I've never gotten it to, even with like, all of the times I've done this, even with RNG, like I never end up doing a lot of damage on this boss fight. So you can see that I repositioned right away because I was in front of the boss and I didn't want to trigger a stomp. So I would say this is probably one of the worst bosses for Enhance, and I don't know why, or if it's just something I haven't been able to really master yet. But I'm typically bottom DPS in my group comp. This is a really good boss fight for people that have like on-demand burst, but we don't really have a lot of on-demand burst. Maybe as Witch Doctors you might do this, but like I said, like PLA is just going to outperform Witch Doctors on average in so many scenarios anyway. I wouldn't worry about getting this boss as high as you can. It's just it's just part of the class you picked that some things won't be as good as other things. There's no unique enhancement stuff. Usually you don't do Bloodlust on this boss because the next boss is like in 3-4 minutes after this. Just don't get hit by mechanics. And in terms of tricks, if you can do some tricks, like right now, so we're going down to 25 energy. Right now, somebody should trigger a stomp. Yeah, so now a stomp has been triggered, which means there's 20 energy, which means that there isn't enough energy left to do another ball phase. So this will prolong this phase a very, very long time. So that could be good, or it could be bad. It means that you won't have to soak 3 different waves of orbs, which is good. But you might want to keep on triggering more stomps just to make this phase like come along a little bit, so that the damage dealers can get to another damage amp phase and we can kill the boss faster, because it takes a long time to kill this boss. The last boss of Spires is Devos. Devos is a bad boss fight for Enhance. It's a bad boss fight for all melee, but there are things you can do to make it better. There's no unique things that you have to do as Enhance. Just respect the mechanics. The mechanics are I mean, obviously you do your earthing, get your big haste buff, make all that happen. Start the fight off strong, but the mechanics are charges. Here's a charge. She'll target somebody and charge to them, and then she'll also do this AoE ability where everybody has to be in this glowing orb thing to not die to it, basically. So the worst part about this fight is the camera angles. The giant angel over here completely obscures your vision. It's kind of crazy that this is like a thing in World of Warcraft. Like, why? I don't know why they would ever do this, but that's just like how the devs are. Like, I don't understand why they do this. That's a big mistake on their part, but it's the case, so you have to deal with it. There's like Corgi goggles. You can Google Corgi goggles. Those come around at the anniversary event, and they turn this angel into a Corgi, and that makes it like actually pretty nice. I don't have that yet though. But in terms of min max, the biggest thing you can do to min max is everyone stand against the wall, because then when she charges, she won't go anywhere, and melee can maintain uptime. Like that's the biggest thing you can do. Otherwise, everybody here has to get a ball, get an orb, and bring it to the center. The tank will handle it from there. The tank will have to just hit the boss with the spear. You're pretty good at getting the orbs, so go ahead, get one, get two if you can. Like you have plenty of damage movement. Sorry, you have plenty of movement abilities. Like you're just a fast Ghost Wolf, and you can also do Spirit Walk with Ghost Wolf. So all of that works pretty nice. Otherwise, you come back and you start this phase all over again. Usually, you Bloodlust the second phase, just to keep it going a little bit further. Make the damage in the phases more consistent, so you don't end up having to spend like forever in one phase. But it's the exact same thing. And like you just saw, she charged and she hit this little wall right here. So that meant that me and the rogue could just maintain our uptime. Now I say it's a bad fight for enhance, but it's also a bad fight for other classes. So we have very consistent damage and we don't lose out like some of the cooldown classes might. Like I think during this fight our warlock might like lose all of his imps because the intermission lasts so long. So if that's the case and you're like, with the warlock, they might lose their ability to do damage at all like during this fight. And also depending on what legendary they run, they might prefer to like have more targets with the implosion build or something to get more haste or something. The point is, like, it's bad for us. It's true. It's like not a great boss fight for us, but it's really bad for other people too. So it might equalize out so that you're like, you're doing average. Like you're not doing amazing, but it could be way worse. It could be way worse. Like you could be a class that's impacted way worse by long intermission phases and low uptime. So I'd give it like a middle rating, like an average. We'll do average on this. You should expect to be, not popping off crazy, but not needlessly abysmal relative to other classes, even though you would be abysmal relative to your highest encounters. Moving on to my least favorite dungeons, the new ones, Gambit and Streets. The first boss is Zo'phex, and this will be a average fight. It's not a great fight for anyone, so you might end up on top just because everyone hates this fight because everybody gets interrupted with mechanics. Ranged people hate it because he has a shield that blocks their abilities. Melee hate it because you have to run around these swirlies and you get disarmed. So everyone has a bad time on this fight. But in terms of mechanics, what you want to worry about is getting targeted with the disarm. Your weapon will turn into a little swirly on the ground. Just go grab that as soon as possible. It's very hard to see, though. It's not very obvious where it goes. And this mechanic, which is happening right now, which is interrogation. So if you get targeted with this, just run out far enough so that you could you have some time for your teammates to break you out of it before the guy gets to you. Otherwise, you'll, I guess, die. I don't know what happens. I've never actually been gotten to, so that was me getting my weapon just there as well. Those are really the main mechanics. It's not a very in-depth, it's not a very complicated boss fight. It's just very annoying. Lots of things that stop you from doing damage. And there's no ads, so if you're going to do good in this boss fight, then it's going to come down to like pulling ads in along with the boss, which there's a bunch of ads you can actually pull in if you want to do that. But you can tell, like, look at this arena. It's very complicated. It's very cucking. Like they always like target you and you have to stop damage, so you'll get unlucky, you'll get lucky. I actually haven't tried if... I'd like to try and test if Marilith's CC through Fleshcraft can stop that from happening. If so, that would make it like very, very nice to keep uptime up on this boss. But yeah, expect to be like, everyone look at this boss. Everyone's like doing the same damage on this one just because, everyone gets unlucky at some point during this boss. Everyone loses, which means everyone wins, right? If everyone loses, everyone wins. You have no unique responsibilities here. Just try to not die and keep uptime as high as possible. The next boss is the Menagerie, in my route at least, in the route that we're doing here. The big thing with the Menagerie boss is, well, there's three phases. There's this guy first, the brute-looking guy that looks like the first boss in Segment Depths. Use the relics to get a damage amp on him. This fight is mostly a series of single target fights with small overlaps that you can use to get buffs in. But the mechanics are the big thing here. Just make sure when you get sucked in, you don't stay in there for too long because you get hurt if you do. The first phase, he summons this blue thing on you, but the blue thing doesn't do anything because the mechanic that the blue thing is important for doesn't exist yet until like the second phase. So I'm not sure why they bothered making the blue thing like exist on the first part. That's kind of weird to me, but really just don't get hurt on this first one. Nothing you can really do to damage amp otherwise. Just base yourself. I don't think people usually use Lust on this boss either. I think we usually, but my pugs will do it on like mailroom typically. The next guy is this guy. Be prepared to go to a corner because tanks usually put him in the corner so that soaking his orbs are a bit easier. You do have something important to do on this guy. He'll get a shield, and you have to purge that shield off, and then he can be interrupted. So this shield right there, you purge that shield, and then people can interrupt his cast. So that is something important for you to do. Right now, I'm targeted with the blue thing, which means that it's my job to stay as close to the boss as possible because these orbs, you can get the orbs, and they'll pump up your damage. But if they hit other people that don't have this blue thing around them, then they get hurt. So stay as close to the boss as possible. He boops you back. You can probably stay up against the wall to avoid the boop, but just be ready to purge him. You can get a damage amp by getting the blue thing, but you can't control whether or not you get the blue thing. So if you do get the blue thing, make the most of it. Maybe hold your dogs until like you know who's getting the blue thing. Then you'll know like maybe you get a small boost on your dog window. But not a lot you can do. You can save your Primordial Wave for this part right here. So what I do right here is I send Primordial Wave now. They both have the Flame Shock debuff, and now I get the double haste buff. That's a small thing you can do. That giant blue thing, so there's a small blue thing, and there's the giant blue thing. The giant blue thing will hurt you and everybody around you. It has to be dispelled. You probably will get dispelled, but you can be cautious and just run out if you want to. And now we're back into like, kind of boring, no optimization territory on this part. I don't think you might be able to actually keep your Flame Shock up on the corpse in the corner to get... I actually have to test that. Maybe you can keep your Flame Shock up on this corner corpse to get double... Yeah, that might actually be true. Okay, well, test it out in your runs. It might be the case that you can keep Flame Shock up on this dead guy in the corner, and in which case you'll get more Primordial Wave benefit. That's kind of an interesting thing to consider. Otherwise, just don't get sucked into his suck. And if you get the blue thing, then make sure you stack as close as you can on the boss so that other melee in the group don't have to run away and avoid the floating orbs. I would say, much like the first boss, this boss is like an everyone loses scenario, so you'll be doing as well as everybody else. The casters don't like this, melee don't like this really. The bosses in this dungeon aren't great, so just do the mechanics and make sure you do the purge, because that's the thing that you're supposed to be doing. Only you can do. Well, only purge classes can do. And keep uptime high. Next boss will be very similar to the last bosses in terms of enjoyment. The mailroom boss is about the same difficulty as the other guys. But the mechanics here, everyone has to do, unfortunately. So you've got these floor targeted effects. The purple things you want to stand in, because if you don't, then they turn into like goo on the floor that you can't stand in ever. So you want to make sure to stand in some stuff, and you definitely want to sacrifice some of your damage to do that, because it's very important for like the longer term fight. So after you soak these things, there's nothing that only you can do. There's no purges or interrupts you have to worry about. You are very good though at running the other mechanic in this fight, which is the mailboxes. This yellow thing on the ground right now, everyone has to stack in this so that the damage that it does is split evenly between everybody. On Quaking Week, that's obviously like really dumb. I don't know why. It's just like, that's how I was. But you can take these mailboxes and you have to run them to the open mail chute. So find the open one. You have to just look around for a while, and you can turn into a ghost wolf and throw these in. Technically, you can throw these to other people, but no one actually leverages that mechanic because it's hard to coordinate in pug settings. But you're good at running mail, so you should run some mail whenever you can. Leave the range classes that have burst windows to do their burst windows, because you're doing just roughly normal equal damage throughout the entire fight. You don't depend on those kinds of things. There's no other major mechanics to worry about. There's no damage amp phases that I'm aware of. It's all just like movement, low uptime, pure single target, and having to do mechanics that one-shot you if you don't do them. So just like the previous two fights, try to keep your uptime high and make the most out of what you can do uniquely, which is running the mailboxes. You can see right there. I went to the very furthest mailbox and I stacked my Ghost Wolf with my movement speed ability to run that in. So keep uptime high, don't die. The next boss is the Oasis boss. I guess the person's name is Mueh'zala. There's this RP section that you have to do when you're in front of it, where you have to run these items out to different vendors and use your boss button to deliver the items to get this like secret password to enter the dungeon. So I have this weak aura that shows me the location of every single one of these. I think there's better weak auras now that actually like are more deliberate in showing you. So go check Wago. Just type in like streets or something. Type in like streets market. See what the latest awesome weak aura is to do this for you. But the goal is use your Ghost Wolf. You go very fast. Deliver all the goods to the various vendors, and then after the third good, after you deliver the third good, you'll see in your chat window the secret password, and you can take that secret password, give it to this person over here, and then you can open the door and finally start the boss fight. So if I skip ahead a little bit, you'll see we finish off these little ads. The rest of the team will just be like hitting these ads. Don't worry about the ads if you're doing the running, which you're a good candidate to do the running. In my case, it was Crimson Knife, so I picked Crimson Knife, and we go inside. Now, the second part, where there's more mechanics, are the instruments. I usually take the saxophone. No particular reason. I like the saxophone. A lot of them do the same thing, though. There are different patterns. The saxophone pattern is 3 in a row. So if you press your boss button when you have the saxophone, you'll do a jump forward like this. You'll see there. Now every time you do that jump forward, if you hit all the musical notes, then you get a damage buff. So you want to get all the musical notes in this first phase, so you can get a damage buff. Now this next part is something you can help out with a lot. You'll get 4 ads. I think these ads get deleted by our hunter, but 4 ads is perfect for you because that's 1 primordial wave and then 1 spread, and then you can get full benefit from all the ads for your primordial wave lightning bolt. The important thing though is to target the Oasis security, because the Oasis security has a cast that if it goes off, I think it's called like Menacing Shout, you'll all die. That's basically what's happening there. So you can spread it. You can this one wasn't really important for me because you can see our hunter is doing 100,000 DPS on 4 targets, so I didn't have to worry at all about about doing any damage on this one. That can happen sometimes, but yeah. So you'll get 2 phases of this, and you go back into the music phase where you have to line over the 3 music notes. Nothing huntery about this. Just keep on doing your musical notes. Make sure you miss these swirlies on the ground. So far, there's nothing really important damage-wise. Just, get your primordial wave off on the Oasis security guy and try to funnel him down. I wouldn't bother doing Lashing Flame spread. I would just focus on the Oasis security because he's the most dangerous and he has the highest health. So he'll end up falling down at around the right time with everybody else if you just funnel him and not worry about overall on this fight, on the ads at least. You have 1 more phase where you have to do the musical instruments. And the next thing is the boss. The boss will come down with all of the relics. The relics, watch out, make sure you don't saxophone into a swirly. I usually just start by tagging and making sure he goes a little bit lower than all the other guys. I think I probably risk missing out on Primordial Wave, but I definitely want to make sure we get So now we have the real boss here. The real boss has a couple of mechanics. This is the tricky part. Here's the big trick. If you want to maintain the damage buff that you get from the music phase, you have to stay in his spark and risk getting one shot. So at the very end of the spark cast, you can see the musical notes appear, and you can saxophone out of the spark over the notes and then keep your damage buff. That's going to be the key to doing a lot of damage on this boss. I mean, it's not like a unique damage buff to you, and you can't make that much use out of it. I stood in front of his frontal on that one, which is something you want to avoid. It's very hard to see like which way he's facing with all these floor effects. But And now I was able to keep my buff, so I'm doing decent. I don't think the other two guys bothered with that, but both of them have better. Well, at least the hunter has better single target damage anyway than me, especially more consistent on this boss. And just make sure you kick the menacing shout. But here you can see the second one. If you want to keep your damage buff, you have to stay in here long enough until you start to see over here the musical notes, and then you saxophone out of the notes. This is a really weird boss fight. I will not be looking forward to having this be an option in the pool as the only familiar dungeon in Season 4. This is not a terrible fight for you. It's one of those fights, like all the fights in Streets, where like they're all terrible for everybody. So at least you don't take that much of a punishment because you don't have CD windows that you can blow. Like you just have to maintain uptime. Like that's your trick. So maintain uptime, saxophone as much as you can, and make sure you kick menacing shouts. Shortly after the previous boss, you'll probably have Count, and you'll probably go right to Soasmi, the final boss here. The thing with Soasmi, so also an unfun fight where no one wins, so you'll be just as good as anybody else. The RP takes a while to start off, so you'll probably lose all your Maelstrom, so you'll be going into this fight dry. I'm not sure why there's so much RP, but that's the case, so that's just how it is. Soasmi has a lot of mechanics that are very annoying. The big thing, obviously, is there's a teleporter system where you can teleport between like symboled items. I think this is actually kind of cool, but I think that their implementation of it is pretty bad. I think that the damage windows in between the mechanics are way too short. And they shouldn't be moving around and like forcing you to teleport through them while they're doing this. There's like so many unnecessary things that they added to this fight that make it like a worse fight. But the main mechanic is this ring expands out, so you're going to have to find some way to cross the edge of this ring without getting touched by it. Usually, it's by going into these portals. If you're a mage, you can blink through. Otherwise, you have to go into a portal and avoid it. Like, here, I'll go into square, and I'll go in over there. And it gets more complicated as the fight goes on because the room divides over and over again. So you have to just be quick about, noticing the portal start and then taking other portals to get, within that portal. In terms of unique shaman responsibilities, there's nothing here. Just press the less button. Maintain uptime. There is a kick. So normally you're a good kicker, but on this fight, you don't want to kick right away. The only chance that your team has to do any sort of like cooldown damage is if you don't kick that fast. She does 2 casts of something called double technique. And if you kick the 2 casts right away, then you get no downtime where she's not doing mechanics to burst. Well, you can't burst, but your teammates want to burst, so you should be respectful of the overall damage profile. And also, like, you don't want to run around and do these mechanics either. So we'll do more divides here, and then we'll just see one of her double techniques. Otherwise, when I'm doing this entire time, so here she teleported out and she's doing double technique. I'm just doing like high uptime. That's what my goal is here. Here's her kick. You want to get into the portal closest to her, and then start doing damage to her. Right here. And you don't really have to honestly think that much about the portals. Like, you just like take the one closest to you, and eventually you'll end up at the right spot, usually. But I do look, and I take like what I think is the best portal, but if like your camera angle is screwed, then you don't have to. We kicked once, and now we're going to let this go as long as we can. I think somebody kicks just like a little bit too early there. But I am doing the most here because I don't have cooldowns, right? That's why I'm doing the most on this fight. It's not that it's a good fight for us. It's just like not as bad for us as it is for other classes. It's really horrible for casters. It's a terrible caster fight. Hunters have cooldowns too, so he probably got his cooldown cut in half by like one of the divides or something because there's not a lot of times to do big dam. I have to reapply my Soleah's trinket here because the timer is like just too long for us. But yeah, just maintain as high uptime as you can. Nothing special you can do. Don't ruin everybody else's life by kicking the double technique too early. And you might actually end up top on this one just because this is such a terrible fight for every other class but you. Over in Theater of Pain, the first boss is a front of challengers. The usual strategy will be to skip these first 3 and pull the Raging Bloodhorn onto the boss. In very high key levels, they pull everything onto the boss, but I haven't gotten to that point myself yet. So we'll just be talking about this strategy. This boss fight is a very good boss fight for Enhance. It's like, you have at the start you have like 7 targets, and then throughout the fight you have 4 or 3 targets, and you can use all of that for funnel. So what you want to do here depends on your group comp. I usually opt for just channeling all of my damage into Desia because Desia is the first highest priority target. There's a lot of weird mechanics in this fight that you have to be aware of as a shaman, and you actually do have a lot of responsibilities in this one, so mechanics are important here. The big thing that you're going to do, you're going to lust obviously right off the bat. You'll have all your cooldowns. Everybody will be doing like max damage at the start. The thing you want to look out for is maybe try to help. This rogue comes out and stuns people. Like if you could just like cap totem, so at least in 2 seconds it won't be there anymore. You're not the best class to help out with this, but you can like attempt to help out with it. And if you get hit with this, it's like it's not the end of the world. The tank obviously in this case would be the best person because they can just yoink the person towards them and get rid of the rogue altogether. But stuns on this part of the fight is really damaging to people's DPS. So you're gonna do your thing. You're gonna get and then you're gonna put your focus target for kicks on Sathel. The thing that you're gonna be in charge of most likely is kicking the Searing Nightmare. I think it's called Searing Nightmare. We'll see when he actually casts it. That thing does very large AoE. Searing Death, sorry. Yeah, that thing does a lot of group damage. So that makes the fight very, very hard for the healer. That has to be kicked. If you're not in charge of doing that, then the next most important thing that you would probably be in charge of is kicking Pastoran, the Virulent. He'll teleport out, and he has to be kicked back in. So you're a perfect target to... You're a perfect person to kick that too. You're perfect to kick Sathel because Sathel casts that frequently enough that you need your kick timer to get it. You're perfect to kick Parcerin because he is a ranged kick. So one of those you should be kicking on cooldown, basically. Either the Searing Death or the teleport out. In my case, the Rogue and the Warlock are on the Bloodhorn. The next most important thing... So I'm doing Desia, they're doing the Bloodhorn. And we do have a Soothe, but only one Soothe. So there's two... This is like a very... lots of things going on in this fight. The next most important thing that you have to do is keep an eye out for this buff. This has to be purged away. Desia will get it at the start. One of these other two people give it to her. I'm not sure which one gives it to her. Oh, we got a Woe Drifter. That sucks. That's fine. I guess it happens sometimes. But yeah, one of these two people give Desia this buff, and later on they'll give it to somebody else once Desia is dead. But this heals Desia every single time Desia does damage, so purging this off is like doing a bunch of DPS that doesn't actually show up. Getting Woe here kind of sucks because Woe requires kicks as well, so somebody else is going to have to get these kicks now. We did this, I guess that was my bad. Maybe I should have just started off doing more prio to rather than going directly to Desia. I was greedy with the buff for Primordial Wave, the damage buff. Besides those things, this fight is just like very natural. You can get a lot of damage. Oh, is that guy getting... Oh, yeah. Okay, so be very careful about doing what we just did on Sanguine Week because I guess this was before bosses were changed to not get healing from Sanguine. So I guess I think that's not true anymore. I think they do not get healing from Sanguine, so don't worry about that anymore. But yeah, this is a very easy fight to get good value on. At this point, I switched to doing just a couple of Lashing Flames on everybody. Where is Desia? Okay, cool. Yeah, so now they all have Lashing Flames. It's worth spending like the 2 globals just to get the Lashing Flames out if you can. And mentally, what you're thinking about during this entire time is just kicking the Searing Nightmares and purging Desia's healing buff. Like that's what your job is, and it's very important that you do it because it's a big deal on this boss fight. Otherwise, you're just funneling into Desia. It's a good fight for you. Like any fight with ads, and this one has like three bosses, so it looks like somebody else got the purge on that one somehow. Maybe my rogue did the Belf purge, but yeah, any fight with ads, like this one has like ads the entire time. You're gonna do like upwards of 15 to 20k DPS depending on the week and how good you do procs and everything. This is a decent fight for you. Very bad fight for rogues, unfortunately. At least for sub rogues, they don't benefit a lot from any of this. And it's a decent fight for warlocks. The only problem is that it's the first pull, so they have to spend a bunch of time actually gathering resources and building imps. They can't go in and just unload everything like like we can. Like we don't have any of those constraints like they do. But eventually the warlock will win out, but that's fine because you're still doing respectable amount of boss damage yourself. Yeah, keep those mechanics in mind and don't stand in puddles, and you'll do pretty well on this without really having to try all that hard. And like you just saw, I always like Feral Lunge because there's puddles, right? Everywhere there's eventually a puddle. If it's in WoW, there's a puddle. So Feral Lunge gets you across those puddles pretty smoothly. Depending on your route, the next boss will be Zav. The Zav is a terrible boss fight for everybody in the game. Like like this is just like this fight. Hopefully fights like this don't get put into WoW in the future. Like it's very bad, and it's bad in so many ways. So mechanics. There's a couple mechanics that are important. You're not as important as a mechanical person as you were on like the first boss. Nothing like that. Now it's just like everybody has to do the mechanics, and you're included in everybody. The banner. This has to go down ASAP because it slows you down, and he's about to do a bunch of frontals that require movement. So this has to die. On this fight is complete troll because if you kill at the wrong time, you'll have a big health buff that stops you from killing each other down below. So he'll send 2 people down below. Who he picks is total RNG. Whoever he picks doesn't get to have fun playing the game. We're still trying to kill this banner. Everything's like very hectic at the start, but it gets into a smoother rhythm. If you're a caster, keep in mind this will interrupt you, and if you're trying to get a quick primordial wave off right now, just don't make sure you have 5 Maelstrom, because if you try to cast it, you'll get interrupted and spell locked. So the big thing here is this mechanic. He takes 2 people and he sends them down, and the winner gets a buff and the loser gets a damage debuff. So it's a very lame concept. Whoever gets picked will be the ones doing like the least damage by far. So you can't ever judge someone's overall in this without knowing like how many times they were picked for Zav. I usually just like let somebody beat me because I'm not a cooldown class. I'll be okay. Like if they have cooldowns, they can get amps for it. It is technically, there are technically ads because the banners are ads, but the banners die so fast. You can use them to get the 20% buff, but in my experience, a single ad isn't large enough to make us really benefit a lot from damage here. So I'll do oh yeah, actually I think I kind of messed up here. I think I used my lightning bolt before I had flame shock applied to that other guy, but obviously that's where you'd want to do it. You would want to make sure that they get make sure that you get full haste benefit from that banner ad, and you want to usually haste this boss too, or sorry, lust this boss. I get picked every single time this fight, so like the warlock is just up here chilling, doing his 18k single target damage. Me and the rogue slumming it down here. I think I should have won probably. Like I should have actually requested to win because like the rogue's puny damage compared to like mine with my damage debuff. But yeah, it's not a great fight. This is not a fun fight for anybody in the game. I think nobody likes this fight in any way. So don't be surprised when you don't do very well in this fight. The next boss is the Lich boss in Theater of Pain. This is an okay boss fight, not a great boss fight. It's nowhere near as bad as Zav, but it's obviously nowhere near as good as Affront of Challengers. So there's no ads, so that means no damage optimization. There's no responsibilities that are unique to you as a shaman. No purges, no range interrupts, nothing like that. The big thing is mechanics here. This mechanic right here that's happening, 2 people get targeted, and at the end of this cast, they will have their spirit taken out. So what you want to do is you want to stand in these hands so the spirits get caught by these hands. Then you can just get your spirit back. If you fail to do this, then your spirit runs around everywhere, and you have to go and get your spirit back. You're pacified until you do, and you take a lot of damage. There are a couple of tricks that you can do. One thing to note is after this phase, after you get picked by the hands, you have a small damage buff window. So we usually save Lust for after the first hands, so we can double it up with the damage buffs. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing you can do is, if you're Merilith, you can Fleshcraft to make the hands not happen. So if you have Fleshcraft up and you get picked by these hands mechanics and you don't want to deal with like going away, then you can just start channeling Fleshcraft. It won't go off on you anymore, and you can stay in the boss's range and do your rotation. Otherwise, it's just a very, very long boss fight. It's a pretty tough boss fight for healers. He puts out this dot as well, and the dot can overlap. Like, this is the dot right here. So just make sure that you save your Astral Shift for like that scenario, basically. If you have a Warlock, then the Warlock and the Priest, or the Warlock and the Healer, can like each get one of those dispels. But if you have only one dispel, then you'll have to just have one person, use a defensive or something like that. It's a not a great fight. Like, I'll probably end up as the lowest overall on this fight, as you can see. So, I would say don't expect much from this fight. Just make the most out of the things you get. Maybe try to use the Fleshcraft trick to keep uptime a bit higher. It's not going to be a great fight for you. Gore Chop is the next boss in Theater of Pain. Gore Chop is actually a okay fight for Enhance. There are frequent periodic ads that come in. It's a little tricky to get full value off of those ads. You can't always do it for sure. They jump around everywhere, and sometimes you don't get resets of Primordial Wave. But in general, like you can see here, here's the first one coming out. I tried to get a manual Flame Shock on one of them, so I can at least get the benefit of one. And then the other one, I hope I can get in a Lava Lash spread by chance. But there, I think I was maybe a little bit too slow. I got a couple. I'm at like 66% haste right now. The big trick here is just you're always thinking about the next ad wave. So the mechanics on here aren't too punishing for melee. If you're too far, you'll get yoinked over, but you'll be close enough anyway that you won't get yoinked because that's what you're doing. Once the chains come down, which is the other big mechanic, you're going to take whichever one is closest to you, just Flame Shock them, and the other one is out of range right now. But I should be able to, so this is the other guy. I will Flame Shock him. So now I've got 2 Flame Shocks up. Now I'm set to just send my Primordial Wave onto the boss and do a Lightning Bolt, and now I have the triple Lightning Bolt buff again. So I guess I got the third guy on the first one as well. If you're lucky, like I'm getting lucky right here, you'll have resets on this thing, and you'll be able to keep on doing damage. So now we have more ads. I'm going to send out another one, and I'm going to get another 3-stack haste buff. My Warlock, all of these times I'm doing these videos, and I have a Warlock in the group, it sucks because they're just so broken right now that the context of good or bad with the existence of Warlocks is totally skewed. But it is a good fight for Enhanced relative to all the other fights for Enhanced. Like if anything, the ad phases are probably too frequent. Like I feel like it's a little unreasonable how frequent the ads come down. But so here we're doing the exact same thing. We're just avoiding the haste, the hooks, and we're getting our lava lashes to spread our flame shocks, and then we're getting the large haste buffs. I guess I got a haste IQD as well there. So yeah, like now my DPS actually increased over the course of the fight, not decreased. Usually on a boss fight it'll decrease because we only have ads at the start. Now we've got plenty of ads. We got funnel, we got cleave. Oh no, yeah. The bad thing about being with a rogue and a lock is that whenever the tank dies, you're next on the list to die. So be very careful about that. One tricks you can do on this are you can go very far if you want to pre-position yourself for something, and then you can use the Merilith. I think you can probably use the Merilith CC to not get yoinked in. That probably works. I don't see why not. But I think I probably got every single one of these ad phases for the haste buff. So I'm doing like 3k more than the rogue, and the rogue is basically resigned to doing single target DPS on this fight. So these ads mean nothing to him. That gives you some context for how much of a benefit we can get from a consistent periodic ad phases if we can leverage them. We have to make sure we get the primordial wave buffs out. But yeah, this is a good fight for Enhance. You'll be probably, I don't know, toward the top of the pack on any pull that doesn't involve a warlock here, if you can manage to do so. Just don't die to random stuff like the hooks. The last fight is Mueh'zala. Mueh'zala is a pretty decent fight. but it's a lot harder than it is to get the value on Mueh'zala relative to like Gorechop. There aren't as many ads on Mueh'zala as there are on Gorechop, um, and the ads are a bit more spread out, and they're harder to get your you can't cleave your flame shock onto them as easily because they're all casters, so they won't be as grouped up nicely like they will be on Gorechop. This fight, oh man, the mechanics in this fight are just like nuts. I remember learning this fight when the expansion was new. It was just very, very difficult. But here's the ad phase. You want to basically kick your guy right away, and if you can, I do the wrong thing here. I did Fire Nova right away. It's very hard though to get your team to not delete these ads right away. So it's like it's really, really hard to actually get your flame shocks to go onto them before they all just die. Um, maybe you want to just like precast your primordial wave and then count on just doing a lava lash and a bolt when they come out, and then only aim for 4. That's probably going to be like the safest thing that you can do. Usually people want to lust on this pull at 50%. That's because the second phase is more dangerous than the first phase, so you'll take a slight hit in overall, but the second phase will go faster than it would have otherwise, which is very good. I'm not doing great on this fight. The rogue actually has a much easier time using this fight as funnel for himself. Let's see. So can I get? I do get it this time. I got like 80% haste, but there's so many mechanics that like, can you even leverage the haste? Like I'm running for my life right now. I'm going to spend some maelstrom on healing myself. It's a very difficult fight mechanically. Maybe the most difficult fight mechanically in the expansion. Marjota just freaked out right there. I'm not sure what was going on, but yeah, like the rogue and the warlock actually can use these ads a bit more easy than you because they just have instant things that leverage ads, whereas we have to like ramp up a little bit. We need like 2 or 3 globals, but the rogue can do like Shuriken Storm and just start pumping eviscerates into Mordretha, which is probably what he did. And then the warlock can just do implosion, and everything just dies. So it's an okay fight for you. I'd say Goreshop is better than this fight, and Affront of Challengers is obviously way better than this fight because the ads are just always there. But if you focus on anything, just focus on the mechanics and not dying. That will be your biggest overall increase for this fight.